I'm plugged into the Agorist Nexus. We need the whole community connected. We're the alternative collective. Self-sufficient and effective. So the rug from effective. Each one teach one. Self-sufficient and effective. Free knots.
It gives you the option to record to the cloud, and I don't fucking understand that, because, like, why would I want my information immediately stored in the cloud, and isn't the point to, like, have a preserved copy? I never understood that. Whatever. So this is Agorist Nexus podcast. We got an interesting episode for y'all today. We got Han and Lawless here to discuss their new podcast, Western Woman. And we have an interesting conversation coming up, I think, because as most of y'all know, I've got a relatively extremist position on various issues relating to parenting, and also like modern and also classical feminism. So this should be an interesting conversation, to say the least, because that was the pitch, I guess. Before we jump into it, the show is brought to you by Agorist Acres. Use code Nexus for 20% off, and also throwing money at us because we can't dance on the pole for free. So feel free to support the cast if you want, and also subscribe star. We've got a fundraiser for a documentary we're doing. There's a lot of options. So if you decide you want to do that, there are ways you can do that. And all of the support links will be in the description. Also hit us up if you decide you want to sponsor our extremism. Because, you know, Fight Club does not yet have corporate sponsorship. We will bring it up when it happens. But anyway, hope you're doing well today, Dag. And
heck yeah, man.
Yeah. In general, what's the vibe of your podcast, and do you mind introducing yourselves?
So basically, vibe, I don't know, what kind of vibe would you say it has? I mean, it's kind of supposed to be informative, gentle, motherly, but when I say, I don't know, I say motherly as in not like, oh, you're perfect the way you are, give you hugs and kisses. No, we're like tough love. Like we want to see you get your shit together.
Yeah, which is, both of us have gone through the process of getting our shit together, so we feel authorized to do this.
At the very least, as far as I'm concerned, my whole thing is, if my dumbass can pull myself up, then y'all can too, you know? Because I mean, I am a mom, I am a mother, and
you are as well, right, Lawless?
Oh no, not yet.
Well, we'll get there. So the general vibe then, I guess you would be more on the mothering end of it, and Lawless would be on the cultural end of it, with talking about like the sort of de-advancements in the way society handles femininity and women in general. Or is that both of you, and both of you are handling both?
Say both.
Yeah, I'd say both. A big part of what we're going to be talking about is how femininity is good, because we have this new modern feminism that's become toxic, in our opinion. And we think that embracing original femininity, embracing the nurturing side, embracing the family unit and that culture is what society needs to strive. Whether or not you want to produce, you know, an army of children and have a homestead, you know, you can still have a family unit and hold those morals.
Ah, gotcha. All right, so just to like sort of ease into that, then let me just ask a softball question. Like, was feminism ever good?
That kind of, I suppose, depends on what you mean by feminism. Is one of those words that gets thrown around very loosely without anybody really knowing what it means. You know, you get some people that say, well, I'm a feminist, but they really do legitimately mean, I just want everyone to be equal. We're all the same. We just want to be partners, and we just believe in being a wholesome woman. But then you get modern feminism, where we have blue-haired, ringing, shrieking, androgynous creatures just shrieking into the void. And that, to me, that's what feminism is now. So to ask, has it ever been?
all
I don't like the
ego-driven.
word feminism. I don't really like the word feminism in general, to be honest. I like the word femininity, but like wholesome femininity, divine femininity, I don't like the word feminism.
Well, and like I could sort of jump off that by saying, and this is the reason I framed it as a joke, because I don't think it was ever good. And the reason is that, like, arguably, like the early feminism in terms of like calling it that would be like the saloon smashers and the chicks who were putting like white flowers in dudes' pockets because they didn't want to fight wars, and temperance, and you know, all this stuff that was basically designed to not advance men or peace, or, you know, try to open people up to better possibilities, but something that Erica, the Earth Nerd anarchist, would call like equal in bad, not equal in good. Like, it's not a good thing to, like, you know, try to be equal at all, in my opinion. I think people should shine where they shine and not try to be the same. And then, like, it's not good to try and be equal in bad, like say, well, I had to deal with this for so long, so now I'm going to inflict it on you. Or, you know, you should sink to the level I'm going to be at in order for us to be equal there. You know, it seems to me that a significant amount of feminism was just like, hey, there's too much mud here, let's bathe in it too.
No, I can't disagree
Right.
with that. And I think Lawless and I can both kind of agree when we say equal, we mean more like a balanced kind of way. Men
Right,
are
right.
better at certain things than women are. Men are stronger, men are bigger. There's just going to be a lot of things that men are better at than women as a whole are. But then we also have the other end of that, where there are certain things women are going to be better at than men, just biologically speaking. And
Right.
to try to act like we can all just middle ground that's not bringing, and like you said, it's not bringing anybody up, it's only bringing everyone down, because we have our maxes. I can't be as physically strong as a man. It's never going to happen. So what am I going to do to make that equal? Make them weaker? That doesn't do anybody any favors.
Hey, there's this patriarchy. We can't point to the patriarchy, and we'll definitely say that the patriarchy is responsible for all these evils, despite most men like having it like statistically worse now than ever, and most men having like a severe dearth of political power in like a variety of ways, compared to the amount that they're injured in workplaces, or compared to the like amount of men's only domestic shelters, and, you know, like custody. Like, there's a laundry list of things that feminism just doesn't address with the concept of the patriarchy. And I feel like the patriarchy is designed to say, we want you weaker so that we are on the same level, rather than saying none of us should be this weak and we're all going to become stronger. That's why I say, like, there's something to be said maybe for anarcho-feminism, but not for, you know, the way feminism has turned.
Is anarcho-feminism a thing now?
Oh, it's been a thing for like
Mhm.
a really long time, like
I
since
must have done a
early.
good job avoiding that, because Lord.
Can you tell me what that is?
So the idea
What is
is that
anarcho-feminism?
the state has
Basically
been
anarchy.
designed. Yeah, I mean, the state has been designed to uphold constructs. So if we smash the state, the constructs will go away effectively. You know, we need to smash the state so that the male domination doesn't imperialistically infect the world, etc., etc. There's a lot of stuff there that's actually really interesting when you delve into it, and it's a lot more interesting than status like Gloria Steinem brand feminism.
Well, that just sounds like anarchy, but with extra steps.
Yes,
Yeah, this is a
but I
little
mean,
redundant. That's what I always thought.
to be fair,
But
to be fair, like, all anarchy is anarchy with extra steps. Nobody's just like, hey, we smashed the state, now we'll just go like drink water forever. So
I don't know. It just seems like it seems a little virtue signaling to me to have that specifically as a, I don't know. But again, that falls back into the feminism thing where they have to make a bigger point. They have to make a point, and they're trying to be louder. They're trying to seem more unique. And that's kind of how that term feels. I'm not going to lie.
I mean,
Well,
sometimes
and
it can
that's
be.
the issue. Everyone, sorry. The issue that I see a lot in society, obviously everyone else does too, is that people want to feel unique. They want to feel special, and they refuse to embrace this, like their actual, what they're good at. Obviously, like we see it in society today with the transgender issue and how everyone wants to be something they're biologically not. And I think that if we embrace masculinity, embrace like feminine virtues, like being nurturing and being caring, it's going to benefit everyone.
Well, I will say something to that, just a little pushback that there is some biological evidence for a significant amount of trans stuff, but like there is too much emphasis on trying to say that that's the only possible truth if they have any sort of like questions about gender at all. So I will say that, but like there's a lot of like validity in trans circles. So I do want to say that, because we have a lot of trans listeners. I have a lot of trans people in my audience, and I will say that, like, it's not all invalid.
Oh yeah, no, we don't. It's not that
No.
when we say that, or I assume Lawless too. I know with me, it's more like there's this strong push. We're now involving children. We're now getting them surgeries, and it's like we shouldn't be teaching children that they are in the wrong bodies. We shouldn't be teaching children to worry that they are imperfect, because ultimately that's what this is telling them, that they're not perfect unless they do all these drastic measures. It's one thing if you're an adult, you felt like this for a long time, and you want to take the steps to change yourself around. You think it's going to be a healthy decision for you. That's fine. And I'm not going to look down on you on it. I'm not going to judge you for it. You do you. I don't care. But it's taken an unhealthy twist since then, when we're chopping kids' genitals off and whatnot. That's another
right.
That's what I will say is that happens so rarely.
No, it does, but everything starts off rare.
I mean, sure, but at the same time, like the vast majority of the issues still isn't kids. I do want to emphasize that.
But it's not.
Right.
But
when
it is.
We're just emphasizing that we've seen a big push. Yeah, we've seen a big push, especially in the last it seems like the last few months even, where it's been super common to see it in news articles and becoming a complex in news articles.
It's more like nip it in the bud before it gets too big. Because yes, it's not happening everywhere, but it's also not something we can just ignore and act like it's fine.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, the news biases things all the time, and the news regularly runs like highly inflammatory and exaggerative storylines on either side. I think
I'm not even just speaking about news. I'm talking about journalists and Twitter, like just things that you see constantly everywhere.
Boston Children's Hospital ads,
that whole thing.
That's not a news story. You can just go online and look at the website. It's right there.
Right. So go ahead.
So I'm sorry, like I just want to jump in here real quick on this. So like I definitely agree with like what you're saying, Han. I don't have kids. I'm not really like exposed to like what's going on with like kids in public school and everything. When last time I went to public school was almost 20 years ago, and like sort of the vibe was like I never knew anybody who was like prejudiced against anybody in the the LGBT community or anything like that. It was fine. There weren't really like open gay couples in school, but like nobody cared. Talking to some friends who like have kids in school, I'm like, I hear a lot about this in our circles, the kids and the trans and all that, and I'm just like people are overblowing it, right? But hearing like that, it's like, okay, kids like, let's say in the age range of like 10 to 12, like if you're listening in on a group of them talking, they're talking about like what it like, oh, are you something, one of the letters of that string, this and that, and it just seems so like, I really do feel like maybe it's a lot more common than like I thought it was, or just so much more in just the zeitgeist or whatever, that this is actually like a thing and going on to this extent. And I sort of have to wonder, just one thing, you guys had like mentioned earlier about like people needing to stand out or feel special, and have a thing or an ailment or a something, and it seems like these days it's so easy to have a thing or an ailment or a something, and I just really have to wonder if because I think what the figure is like 24% of kids like identify as something other than cis or whatever, which just seems like that can't be like an actually accurate number. I don't want to disparage anybody who, you know, obviously isn't, but like that just seems really fucking high. And it just makes me wonder, you know, like what is going on here? Because something about all this seems a little odd for sure. But you know, obviously,
questions, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally cool with whatever like anybody like is like. I'm not like, you know, what have you, but like, I don't know, man. I have a hard time getting a grasp on it, and I just really felt like it was overblown. But actually asking around people with their kids and what they're talking about in schools, I feel like it might not be, and it's just a little strange.
Yeah, no, I have other friends
done.
who are moms, of course. I mean, I am a mom. I've always homeschooled my children, but of course I have other friends who are moms. It's everywhere. Okay, am I the only parent in this conversation here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. It absolutely is. Not every single school, but it is a thing kids frequently talk about, because let's be real, kids are watching TikTok all the time. Kids have free internet access. They're not just getting it at school, they're getting it on social media. And then they bring what they see through social media into schools and talking about it with their peers. And so it spreads. So yeah, these are legitimately things that kids wonder about. They sit there and they wonder, like, you know, should I feel differently? It's not enough to be like, sorry, I'm being creeped on. It's not enough for people to simply be like, you know, well, who am I? Who am I as a human? Who am I as a person? Now it's, am I something completely different? I mean, for God's sakes, now it's now furry with extra steps, where people are calling themselves catkin or whatever. Now we have this tiny percentage of people that don't even feel like they're humans. And now I just saw an article, this teen girl is being allowed to go to school and act and dress as a cat. She's literally being allowed to call herself a cat.
And they've given her a
act
litter
like
box, haven't they?
No, that was fake. The litter box was fake. But thank God.
The bridge
thank
too
God.
far.
Biohazard. But
here's the thing. That's I think emblematic of quite a bit of this. I don't mean to invalidate your experiences as a parent. Not remotely what I'm doing. What I will say though is that litter box thing is pretty emblematic, because
it's fake anyway. Like, it didn't happen. That's what I said.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying about it, is that it's emblematic of a lot of the stuff that's out there about this issue, is that people will say that somebody said something and that's good enough. Like, I posted on Facebook. I don't know if we might be friends on Facebook. I don't know if
we
you're there
are,
or not,
but I'm hardly on Facebook.
Well, if you're ever interested in reading a frankly insane thread, you can read a thread that I put out saying that you know, if you ever believed the stories about litter boxes in schools, you have no business correcting anybody about anything ever. And this thread absolutely blew up with people who were calling me a pedophile, were accusing me of wanting to mutilate children's genitals, of supporting the satanic trans agenda, of a variety of things. Because
you're just correcting.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's overblown.
So
but when I know
that's
when we
that's
talk,
the result
so
of
much.
this sort of
Yes,
like loading of the issue.
We can't argue when we're seeing a new video proving our point every single day.
Sure.
Video, you know, that's my thing. I try not to bring up just because that's just it. If you just have articles, you just have words. Things get fudged around. People get half information. It is very easy for things to get misconstrued. So I like to wait until, I'm sorry, Libs of TikTok is one of the best accounts that has ever come out in social media.
I disagree.
No, I don't. Just, it exposes, quite frankly, a lot of things that I grew up in California.
Same.
A lot of these things that happen were in my school.
Same.
But people wouldn't believe it. But now it's getting more and more everywhere, and California has only gotten worse. And again, yes, is it all the time, 100% of the time? No. But is it something that starts small and gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets nipped in the bud? Yes, it is. And that is literally the entire point of us. We're trying to nip the problems in the bud before it becomes a bigger problem. Because once anything becomes a bigger problem, And I don't even just mean, I mean, this is a side thing, this whole topic right here. That's just a tiny fraction because we're
Right.
also talking about homesteading, homeschool your kids, nurture your man, you know, I
100%.
mean, lots of different topics. But it is just far too easy for things to just take off and get worse. And
Yeah.
things do just get socially acceptable over time. They
Well,
do.
and what I'll say, two things. First off, I generally agree with like those things you listed, and I regularly advocate them too. I think we're on relatively similar pages there. Libs of TikTok, though, specifically, they have actively lied about a variety of people, including this mom who had a kid who misspoke in a video once and got a long series of death threats and other things because this family was accused of turning their kids into like LGBT because the kid used the word convince when he didn't know any other word for the thing. Like, immediately accepting imperfect evidence isn't reasonable, and Libs of TikTok regularly does that. And
But so do all journalists.
well, but they're not journalists, they have a specific bias. That's the reason they're against Libs of TikTok.
So do mainstream media sources in general. That's literally like all of them.
Well, right, but I'm saying that they're not better because of that. I'm
But
saying
they
that they're just
expose-
as bad.
I'm saying they expose problems that nobody else has the balls to discuss.
Okay, but they also say things that are false. So I mean,
So does everyone else, except
You're
they're also
right.
posting videos.
yeah, but they're posting videos with a bias, and that bias gets people. Yeah,
Usually the
That-
only bias is, hey, this is a thing that happened.
well, except that they
It
add a
happened here.
caption. They add a caption that says their take on it. Like,
Most
and
of the
they
time they don't.
and they regularly post threads that include the things that they
Most of the
couldn't fit in
time it's
caption.
literally just information. That's why they went under fire. They didn't start posting more thoughts until they went under fire for literally just retweeting people and saying, here's what happened, here's where, here's what happened, here's where, here's some screenshots, here's some more evidence. It wasn't until they went under fire for that and constantly shut down that they started speaking their mind, because then they went, oh, you want bias? Well, we'll give you bias, because
Okay.
we're literally just retweeting what you guys posted yourselves.
Post.
Yeah.
But if they're biased, and also like TikTok was specifically not tweeting, so it's hard to retweet that. But like they were
I'm talking about the Twitter
They-
page.
they-
The
they were
Libs of TikTok
He's
actively-
page.
referring to
they were actively reposting people's videos, like without the context that the video included. So, I mean, there
Because
was
it's-
that.
Because it's just a video. What context do you need when you're watching a child stroke a drag queen's dick on stage?
Well, you don't need that context for that, but you do need
that's what
context
I'm
for that
talking about.
conversation that I talked about.
95% of the time, that's the kind of stuff that's being posted. It's
Okay.
pedophiles literally being caught, like trapped by people who are like pretending to be a 13-year-old girl and then going, hey, here's this guy pretending to be a woman in order to have sex with their 13-year-old girl. Here are the exact texts. That was that. What kind of context do you need for that?
Well, I'm not saying I need context for that specific thing.
okay,
I'm
but
saying
that's
that
most of their posts.
I don't think most of their posts are undercover sting operations.
No, they're not, but most of their posts are exactly
well, no,
that,
a lot of it is
where it's point blank.
They're
Okay.
they expose the
Yeah.
grooming and the taking away of innocence of children is what it really is. You
Well,
gotta protect the kids.
just to diffuse tension, because I can feel it building a little. I do oppose that sort of thing happening, and I do support homeschooling. In fact, I have regularly made the point that the entire Department of Education should be abolished.
Absolutely.
And with that being abolished,
Absolutely.
also, we would get rid of a lot of issues like the recruiting for the military and cops, like the 92% of student loans would go away because they're directly going to fund the education system. And also people wouldn't have to worry about what their kids are being taught, because their kids would be being taught by them or somebody that they actively shopped for.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think we can agree on that.
Oh, for
Doug?
sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
if I may, I think that what like Jeremiah is saying, I'm just gonna ballpark this, and I'm sorry, is because I see a lot of this too, is that it's by even like friends of mine who are very much into like checking the facts and making sure that, you know, everything jives when there is something that confirmation bias, be it about, you know, this topic, they don't do a lot of fact checking and they just throw it out there. I see a lot of that. You know, just like any news story at all, I feel like is incendiary for a purpose. Like when we see a lot of news stories about stuff like this, it may or may not mean it's happening more. It just might mean like, okay, somebody wants us to be upset. Now, like you're saying though, if let's say even only 60% of the stuff that Libs of TikTok puts up is exposing really awful, vile stuff, then that's a ton of shit, you know. So if some other other stuff is biased or has opinion behind it, it's who really gives a fuck because of the rest of this, you know what I mean? So like I think we all kind of agree on the important shit there for sure.
Exactly. When I'm seeing every single day a new video posted of a child sticking some money in a drag queen's G-string or something along those lines, or another teacher talking about their it's not even, you know, I don't care if a teacher is like, oh yeah, my wife and they're lesbian, like whatever, okay, whatever, casual conversation. But it's when they brag like, I'm going to turn your kids gay on, because they will post like, I'm the teacher, you have to worry about parents, I'm going to make all your children gay.
So shocked
that kind of
when
stuff,
I
like
see that, because
exactly, that's the kind of stuff that needs to be brought to awareness.
I have a hard time believing, you know, that people can like, and I admit, like, I'm total rude with a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? Like I can't believe people cheat in sporting events, because like, what's the fun in that, you know? Like I'm a total dork like that. So like when like I honestly, some of the stuff I have seen on there, I'm like a little shocked. Now I have to, any amount of it is bad. I always, you know, that there's however many billions of people in the world, you can find some weirdo with any awful opinion, and of course the internet makes it where if they just one or two people have this awful opinion, it's easy to feel like a lot of people do, you know. So I do always try to be careful about that, but again, any amount of that does make it pretty uncomfortable. So
well,
I definitely feel you.
And of course, you know, the reason I get concerned about that is because I've been party to the opposite side of that quite a bit. Like I've been called pretty much every racial slur in the past month, every gendered slur in the past month, a pedophile accused of wanting to mutilate children's genitals for supporting trans people at all, or for saying that furries aren't bad inherently.
I've gotten heat for that too.
So like
I feel that scapegoating all around is very dangerous, and that's my concern with any of this, is that when there is this, well, I'm just going to use the word misinformation. When there is some sort of misinformation or some sort of something that isn't presented accurately, of course the fear is people who aren't, you know, grooming children or whatever, could be targeted for like, you know, violence or what have you, and that's always like really unfortunate. So that's one of the reasons that I too care a lot about the truth being presented as it is, but I'm also not going to go to bat quite as hard as Jeremiah is for the
well, also because
mark on that, you know what I mean?
I've been catching flack for a variety of things for like, you know, over half a decade, just because like the original thing was like, you know, supporting the left at all, you know, saying that we should have unity at all, caught me a lot of flack, and you know, in general, like over the years it's just gotten worse, because more and more of these things are being framed as, you know, sort of either or, sort of loaded things. Either you're with us and trans people are a scourge that's getting, you know, reaching a fever pitch, and you like, or you want to mutilate children's genitals and you're a sick pedophile. And like that's the literal paradigm. I told somebody in a group chat who was claiming to be anarchist that just supporting trans people is fine. And he said not only that I'm with them and a pedo, but that he supports government bans of LGBT in general, but he will be violent to anyone in public, especially if they get near kids. That's where we are. Like, that's like the environment that's being created. So people need to be very careful and specific when they do share things like that. And I just don't feel like a lot of the people like that are careful enough.
I
Like
mean, do
they're
you know how many times I've been called a domestic terrorist just in the past year by Etsy, eBay, Instagram?
yeah.
Had my shop shut down.
I think I
Like-
followed that too. Yeah, you can
Oh
talk
yeah,
about that
yeah.
too.
No,
That
it's
was
a very real
crazy,
thing.
too.
Yeah, I'd actually really
Eventually,
like to hear about that.
but eventually, you kind of just have to suck it up and keep pushing forward and stand up for what you believe in.
Well, and
Like,
I have been
you know,
doing
flack
that.
is flack. You know, and I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying it as a general statement. We're all gonna get flack. Everybody gets flack for something, and it
We
sucks.
gotta rise
you know?
above,
And-
man.
no, exactly. You know, and but I mean,
Yep.
you know, I was my thing, and this is something that Lawless and I were talking about recently, is that as Daggerist, is that how I say it? So Daggerist.
Yeah, you can say dag.
Okay, dag. As you were
dag for
saying-
short.
As you were saying earlier, at first you kind of feel a lot of these issues are really not as common as they are. It's like, oh no, that's got to be just a blown out of proportion one-time
Mhm.
incident that everyone's just mad about, and so everyone keeps
I-
talking about it. It
I,
seems more
I live in
common.
the sticks, not New York City. What the
Right.
fuck?
So
You know
it's
what I
very
mean?
easy
Yeah.
to think that, absolutely. But then you find out, oh, wait, it actually is more common. I've had this conversation regarding pedophilia many, many times. We were talking about this not long ago. A lot of times people don't want to think, oh, my uncle touched my daughter or etc. They brush it under the rug. And then over the years, you grow up and you start to feel more comfortable speaking about what happened to you, because now you're not going to be punished as a child for trying to speak
real,
up.
yeah.
You're going to be believed.
Mhm.
And then you realize it's far more rampant than you ever thought
yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
and
yeah,
I
family
so
stuff
that
like
is
that, I think so,
yeah,
yeah.
that is kind of the concern going on here is yes, there is going to be an extent where things are blown out of proportion. Everyone focuses on one thing and gets really mad. And so everyone's thinking it's everywhere. So
or
I
just
feel like
thinking
it's
something that isn't true, like the litter
oh
boxes.
sure, yes, but I feel like there's like a middle, well, yeah, like
Right.
litter boxing, but I feel like there's a middle ground where it's
Yeah,
like
sure.
it's definitely not as rare as people would like to think it is. Maybe not as common as many people think. Well, I mean, definitely some people think it is more common because, like you said, Jeremiah, they'll just call anybody a pedo for the dumbest little things. But there's definitely an in-between level there that needs to be addressed, and especially brought to the attention of those who think it's very rare and oh, it's not going to happen to my kid. It's not going to, you know, that they so easily think, well, it's not going to happen to my child. It's not going to happen to my child. And then they stick their kids in these situations
Because
and are
of
shocked
school.
that it happens. Yes, the schools or even daycares, etc.
Yeah.
And then they're shocked when it happens to their children.
Right. But that's like, I think part of the cool thing about being anarchist is you can solve that problem by just saying abolish. So this is my sort of approach in this regard, as I think you know. Choose a partner that you believe would be long-term stable, not just somebody who's hot or has money or something like that. Somebody you're
It's gotta be
compatible
both.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Somebody you're compatible with and somebody you would feel safe with around kids. And then responsibly fuck. Like ultimately don't do it unless you can do it and shoulder the costs of the potential spawn. And if you do that, you'll have a firmer foundation anyway. Like I grew up hardcore Christian. And I've read the Bible like 3+ times, like back to front to back. I don't know, fucking whatever. It's not a manga, but like I've read it like in order 3+ times, and I can tell you that that when it comes to sex, a lot of people aren't willing to be responsible at all because the progressive mentality says you should eschew all of that and just do whatever you want, right? And that has resulted in a society with a lot of unwanted kids that parents resent or get rid of, or just a variety of awful things. So responsibly fuck with somebody you can trust with kids and somebody who's good for long-term stability. And then when you get to that stage where you have kids, you'll have a lot better sort of like footing than a wide variety of parents. And then you can say, hey, I have this footing and we're stable enough that I can send my kids to like a personally approved school, like Montessori Waldorf kind of thing, or homeschool them or unschool them at home or something like that, rather than sending them to one of these institutions where the state is going to control the way they think anyway, and it's designed for indoctrination. Like, because the fact is that even if they were trained in utter chastity, you know, Handmaid's Tale future, the indoctrination is what's the problem, because you can mold a kid's mind in any which way. And really that should be closer to the parent, in my view, closer to the parent or the person responsible for the kid, so that this kind of thing wouldn't be a concern to begin with. So we got to radically overhaul society to get to a place where parents can be close to their children, instead of, like, you know, sending them, I mean, whatever my verbal slip up there, sending them to people who want to kill them. You know, like, want them to be thrown into the meat grinder.
And unfortunately, the government is doing everything they can to make sure that's just completely impossible in any way. You know, they don't want us, well, it's like they say, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And quite frankly, that includes your children.
Yeah.
They want complete ownership of your children as well.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, so saw an article. Oh man, I don't remember who it was, but it was very recent about why we should get rid of the family. You know, families are bad. You know, we should be a state commune. You know, kind of what she was pitching. And it was funny because someone in the comments, they took like the first picture, when you look at her profile, was her and her cat, and it's just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. You know, but it is really crazy that how concerted versus just the effects of everything. But I feel like it's concerted. They really have been trying to like destroy the family over the past 100 and whatever years, you know, everything from like the way that children's literature changed to be more about like children going out and being independent instead of children doing things to help the family, you know, all the way to just the way that public school functions, to both parents having to work, you know, maybe even the modern feminism ties into that, you know, that women have to go out and have a career, you know, instead of staying home and taking care of the children. That seems like it was kind of put into a negative light for quite some time, you know.
Yeah, or just like penalizing kids
lots
for
of shit.
engaging with the content. I got a fucking like suspension and referral in school because I read Huck Finn and didn't censor myself when it got to the racial slurs. If you want to give people content to read, don't penalize them for reading it as though they did something wrong. You told me to read it, bitch.
Right. Oh my God.
Like it, and just don't give me that content if you don't want me to read it. Like, I would have been more interested in reading a Stephen King book. Why don't we? He's literature sound. Why don't we read him instead of Mark Twain? Oh, because Mark Twain is the classics. Then let me read the classics. Don't have it and then tell me not to read it. Bitch, shut the fuck up.
I know. I used to get in trouble in public school a lot because they would ask me my opinion on things, and I was always very libertarian minded. And so I would just say, oh, this sounds like some propaganda. Detention. Well, they try to put me in detention. And then they call my mom and she'd be like, well, was it propaganda? Was she right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and oftentimes you would be right. Like,
oh no, I was every time.
Yeah.
I never actually had a punishment go fulfilled because my mom was like, okay, show me how she's wrong though. Oh, you mean she's not? Well, then fuck off.
My parents were less so, mostly because my mother was like a single mother working from home, and she didn't really have time to like go to bat like that all the time, and I got in trouble a lot.
No, my mom was too, but my mom was also just she's just as bad as I am when it comes to being outspoken. So she knew I was a good kid. Like I was a very independent thinker, but I was not a problem child. I was very respectful. I had straight A's. I was staying after school, tutoring kids. So whenever
none of that was true with me.
No, she would hear like, oh, she's in trouble. Well, what the fuck did you do to put her in trouble? Like she knew it wasn't my fault. So yeah, no, I never actually had a full punishment fulfilled because I was taught stand up for what you believe in. If you see bullshit, you call it out. And so that's what I was doing. And I would say, I'm like, you know, I would say to the teachers, we just had an assembly 3 days ago about this exact lesson. I'm just doing what you guys told me to do. And they get so mad. They get so mad.
And what about you, Lolis? How did you like respond to the public school system, I guess?
So I was actually just thinking about that. I don't remember a lot of middle school and high school, partially because I was stuffed full of all sorts of antidepressants and antipsychotics. So what I do remember is I was mild. I was a theater debate speech kid. I was a freaking nerd. But I also remember I never did any schoolwork, but that was because I was like the head of the debate team and like the lead actress in the school play. And so I was always out doing something, but I don't remember ever being educated. And I never enjoyed it, but most of the time I was just a zombie from being drugged up. So
I would have been, but my mother decided, well, we decided basically that the pills weren't working, that they couldn't find out was wrong. And ultimately they found out later that like when I was an adult that I'm bipolar, which is something they never even considered when I was a kid. So that's fun. It's fun that
well, it's often that
go ahead.
it's often not considered. I mean, in children, it was discussed when I was a kid, but I was put on medicine at like 9 or 10 years old. And by the time I was 16, I was so over it that I mean, nothing worked. Nothing ever worked. And I realized when I got older, it's because I was traumatized severely as a child and I just had to heal from those traumas. But that's one thing that we're definitely going to be talking about at some point in the podcast is big pharma and the fact that they force these pills down the, and I'm the living evidence of it. I
Yeah.
was suicidal for 12 years of my life and I was on medication that entire time. And the moment that it was out of my system and I was living a healthy lifestyle and eating right and working out and putting positivity into my own world, that's when my life changed.
And did that start for you as an adult? Sort of a transition to sanity?
Yeah, I was probably about 20. I was 300 pounds and a drug addict 5 years ago. I was a piece
Yikes.
of shit. I made horrible life choices. And in fact, I showed up to my niece's birth, laid eyes on her, and that was it. That was the moment I decided I was going to change everything. And so I got my life together and I got off drugs and I worked out and I changed every single thing in my life to become happy, and it worked. But
Yeah,
I'm not
awesome.
saying that medicines can't work, and I'm not saying that people aren't sick and aren't depressed and don't have anxiety, because those things are insanely real, and I'm fully aware of it. But I think that it's overdiagnosed, and we have to acknowledge that living a healthy lifestyle will lead to a healthy life, and it's ridiculous how denied it is by pharma, by the like social media, by everyone.
Well, also it might like the overdiagnosis is probably real, very likely, but the over medication is probably what's like mostly there because like you can have a diagnosis. I have so many diagnoses. Yeah, I'm ADHD, PTSD, bipolar 1. I got night terrors and bruxism and sleep paralysis. I'm a fucked up individual, but I'll tell you the pills like made all of that worse. And I'm assuming you have a similar story because I see the mycology theme, Harley, in your background, and I'm assuming you have found other ways.
I was literally just saying today how everybody just tags me in everything relating to psychedelics. And I'm like, I don't actually talk about psychedelics all that much. People just assume.
You just look like it.
Is that good? I just look like
it's a great thing, Harles. It's a great thing.
But well, I mean, yes and no, I guess, because actually I'm kind of like you, Jeremiah, where I've got ADHD, PTSD, CPTSD. Last year, I had a very, very, very traumatic experience. Well, the past few years have been very traumatic, but one thing in particular happened. And so I sought counseling and working with all these different people, found out I'm high functioning, severe anxiety, like skyrocketing levels. And I kind of just thought it was normal. So they were asking me like, how do you even function? Like, how are you managing every day? And I'm like, I just do. What choice do I have? I don't know. And at one point, I actually had a government worker say to me, marijuana is legal to grow in Arizona now, right? And I'm like, I just got told by the government to start growing marijuana. Like, how fucked up am I? But the only medication I've really been consistently on through my life was actually Adderall. And that, oh gosh, and then on top, I talk about this a lot too. Same with sleep paralysis. I am type 1 narcoleptic and I get sleep paralysis very severely. So yeah, very fucked up individual. But I don't want that to define me, because there are so many people in my direct life that have just a fraction of the traumas that I went through, just a fraction of the diagnosis, a fraction of the issues. And they let that completely consume their lives. They're miserable, broken, abusive people. And so growing up, having to, I mean, I've been raised in this, and growing up, I'm just like, I don't want that to be me. I don't want to repeat the cycle. So like, what's the opposite that I can do? What are they doing? And what's the opposite of that? And that's kind of just how I based my life. So no, I haven't been on any medication like that since I was 19. At 19, I weaned off of Adderall. And
But they tried.
What?
They tried though, right? That's what you're saying? Like big pharma?
Okay, so I'm actually immune and allergic to a great deal of medications, including vaccinations and such. So after a while, they're kind of just like, okay, nothing's working. And so it just kind of stopped. But my family with issues, they didn't get medicated either. And so I'm like, well, I don't need, if I can't take medication anyway, then what can I do? And that answer was healthier lifestyle. I started working out a lot more. You know, I used to be jacked, not more, but I used to be 3 years ago.
It's always time to get back.
Oh no, I've been working on it actually.
You still are.
Yeah, oh, I'm not. The triceps are coming back. But that's about it.
At least you're working on it, yeah.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
you know, I mean, in that regard, I can't recommend enough. I use at-home equipment. So this is my setup basically here.
That's what I do.
I've got the suspension trainer on one end that I just took to the top of the door, like it's sort of tangled right now. But then I hang off of the suspension trainer through one of the loops. Like I hang this so that I don't have to buy their door hanger attachment. And it's basically like an at-home Bowflex. So I get
You're
all I
telling me
need.
that's not a sex swing?
I was gonna say, I'm imagining some Cirque du Soleil stuff over here,
Well,
like leotards and glitter.
Multifunction.
If you wanted to use it for that, I'm very sure you could, especially since it relies on an external door. So I mean, you could do some voyeurism in your backyard, but like, yeah, you hook this to the top of the door frame, and it like stays because of that. And so then you just you use this end of it to do like pulling exercises, pushing, and you can also use these as unironic leg stirrups. So I mean, you've already got that set up if you did decide to. And so I just hooked. I got the
tutorial.
Yeah, right. I think I've got the Bowflex thing now though, because like this is a resistance trainer, and you pull on this and it gives you like 80 pounds of resistance. So it's a really good setup, and it costs less than $50. So I recommend that, because anybody can store this in their room. So
I've got dumbbells and whatnot. Like my heart, see, I want to tone. I want to like actually look like I have muscle again, but my heart says no, be strong. So I kind of just keep going back to power lifting type stuff instead.
Well, I think you probably could. I think because cardio is one of those things you got to build up to, like really gradually matching your heart. So it's going to be boring at first, I think, is the real problem. But I think you got it.
Thing. I
Like,
would have to force myself to run a mile, like for the first year, and then I started enjoying running. And now I genuinely enjoy it. But my gym is 30 minutes away from where I live, so I don't get to go every day. I get to go like twice a week. And my boyfriend and I have been opening up a grocery store in his hometown the past few months. So I haven't been able to go to the gym like at all in the past 2 months or so. But going up and down ladders and, you know, carrying boxes and remodeling an entire grocery store has definitely been a workout. But
oh yeah,
I went from thin rail last year to like dumb thick. So I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. Earlier today, I saw that video of the daycare workers wearing the Halloween masks, scaring the children and making them cry.
Oh my gosh!
And I read, like, the one who recorded that video spoke up and was like, this is not the first time they've done this. That's why I recorded, because I wanted to show evidence of what's been going on. And so I read all that, and then I just got really angry, and I'm like, I'm gonna fight a bitch. And I went out to the outside and started doing a workout.
That works.
That's how you do it though. That's the best way. That's the
Right.
best time to do it, is when you're full of rage.
Exactly. Just
Well-
chewing everything out and just mad, just Hulk.
Yeah.
Hurt yourself.
I generally like working out is one of my ways to sort of meditate. And it's also what I do with the time that I might otherwise spend on less constructive habits. Like instead of, smoking or drinking or something for my particular high, I guess you could call it, I can just do that and get healthy. And I think clean sobriety is one of the most important things for a better future, because what's funny is, and this is a place that I regularly needle the left on, because me, I'm sympathetic to the left, and I'm more likely than quite a few other people to take their position on something. But at the same time, one of the things that I think is funny is the amount of drunk and drug addicted Marxists, because like if religion is the opium of the people, then I mean, what does that make opium? Like that's just opium on its own. So maybe if you're going to tell people not to be of that mind, you shouldn't be of that mind yourself. Maybe don't replace God with drugs, or, the liquid drug that's legal, which is booze. Like, clean and sober. That's what I advocate. And I've been clean and sober for 4 years now. So.
Well, that's awesome. And no, I mean, I you're not wrong there either. Everyone kind of has a natural inclination to worship. It is literally wired in our brains, where worshiping gives us this high. It makes us feel good. It is a spiritual process. But for those who don't believe in God, they end up worshiping something else. And that something else is more often than not something very detrimental. Celebrities, politicians, whatever gives them a big dopamine hit.
Fauci.
Yeah, Fauci, for exactly. Just anything that makes them feel good, heroic, even, these keyboard warriors, that's their religion. That's their Jehovah's Witness, knock, knock. Like that's what that is to them.
Oh, you gonna say something, Lois?
Oh, I was gonna ask, what made you decide to do like the clean sober living? Because I love that. That's awesome.
Well, I hated it where I grew up and lived most of my life. I loathed going outside because it meant that I had to be in scorching. Like I grew up in SoCal desert, and I grew up in scorching heat, zero habitability of anything that wasn't like okay with growing up in rocks and decomposed rocks, like either things that were designed to hurt you or things that like moved and hurt you, like snakes, scorpions. That it was a bad place to grow up if you wanted to have fun and you didn't have an off-road vehicle. So basically or if your family wasn't a cartel, because there's a lot of meth out there. So if you wanted to get into the meth industry, it was great. You get your in. So I grew up in a place I hated. I was abused as a child. I had a long laundry list of social issues growing up, and I hated my entire environment. And I was never really an alcoholic, but I could have been real easy. And so I decided basically that when I moved to Spokane, which is where I've been for 4 years, that I wouldn't buy any booze. So the closest I've gotten to any of it was a friend sent me some mead in the mail, and I made 2 jars last like 3 months. Like I never once got drunk. It was just the occasional sip when I wanted to celebrate something. So I wasn't even buzzed. But the general vibe of it is that I was no longer somewhere I hated being. So I didn't, need to do that in order to have a good time. So like when I was with friends, my goal would be more likely to, do something like that. And now I'll just like, instead of doing that sort of thing, I'll go do some parkour or for a run or just to the local river.
Did you say parkour?
Yeah.
Did
So
that
you do parkour.
did that
Wow,
change
why
your-
aren't you filming why aren't you filming yourself doing parkour for us?
Because I don't have a good enough
Hardcore, man.
camera to get it
Well,
like actually good.
Find somebody
So-
who does, because I feel like we're being gypped over here.
Well, if
First
if
the
I
step
can,
swing,
This is
now
how
the
you get
parkour.
followers.
I was gonna say.
Come on,
well,
man.
if look, I have a fitness channel on Instagram, and I haven't posted there in a long time because I realized my setup is just inadequate to it. So, if I get a better setup, there's a strong possibility I could. I've wanted to for a while now because I do parkour regularly. Like, there's a lot of stuff around here you can do that on. And one of the things that I wanted to do in the city was that, because it's a good way to be in shape, and it's a good way to learn how to run from authority figures if martial law cracks down, which is, two things that I'm going to need to do. So the general vibe is that, like, parkour. I follow parkour teams on the internet. I just posted about parkour last night too, because like I watched a parkour tournament that like just cropped up because it's not a real legal industry. There's a lot of trespassing you have to do. So like this tournament just cropped up at this wall in the UK, and like a bunch of people just showed up to compete, and that's what I like, is it's a decentralized, very street sport that teaches you how to trespass. So I've been learning a bit about that for some time, and I could definitely do that but like, there are so many other things that are first on my equipment list, like the new camera I was talking about, so I can get my green screen to work. So if y'all want to support Agorist Nexus, feel free, because that's what's going to get that kind of equipment to increase my production value. But there's like, point in general was that like I didn't need it anymore, and like when you don't need it, there's no reason to do it other than habit or addiction. And since I was never addicted, it was real easy for me to just drop it. So
God, that's good. That's wonderful, honestly.
yeah, and also of course I was
Yeah.
I was very enthused to be here. And so like I was annoying people on the plane because I was on a plane for the first time since I was a very young kid. And I came up here and I was enthused to be on this plane and probably annoying the other passengers because I was like, this is fucking awesome. Look at this. There's a fucking mountain over there or something like that. And it was fucking, I was that guy on the plane.
That's wonderful
That's
though.
awesome.
Like, okay. You asked me about psychedelics. Here we go. I was tripping balls one time. And this just made me think of that experience, because in that experience, so you're appreciating the mountain. You're just sitting there going, holy shit, it's a mountain. And to them, they're annoyed, like, yeah, it's a fucking mountain. But to you, it's, oh my God, it's a mountain. I had that experience with marshmallows while I was tripping balls. Like, they were just so like perfect and tiny and smooth and white. And my boyfriend was with me and he's like, stop molesting the marshmallows for fuck's sake. And I looked at him like, they're teaching me things. Because I'm sitting there thinking, all of my cares are gone because I'm so focused on this damn marshmallow, this simple marshmallow that probably costs like a half of a cent to produce. Why can't we all be like that? We are so focused on things that don't matter. We make bigger deals out of things that just aren't really that much of a problem. Why can't we focus more on the simple little things and just embrace life more? Like, if something's annoying, just let it go. Like, just be happy with what you're surrounded by. If things aren't bad, well, then they're good. Right. And that alone right there will cure an awful lot of mental health issues. And that right there will decrease the amount of medication everybody is on. But they don't want you to be happy. They don't want you to be happy. There's no money in happiness.
That was
Not
similar to me on
long-term
salvia. Because I used to do a lot of that before I had a really bad spice trip that scared me straight off
Never
drugs.
done that. I've only done mushrooms, marijuana, and like that.
Don't ever smoke spice. Anybody listening to this, never smoke spice in your life. It is the worst experience maybe that I've ever had.
I've seen people get pretty like, I don't know, strung out's the right word, but get pretty out of their fucking mind over the course of like a few weeks. But of course, there's always people who couldn't smoke weed because they were on probation or something. So of course it was,
that was me, but it was because I promised my mother I wouldn't, and I wanted to keep my promise to her. But it age regressed me to the age of 4.
True.
And I was very stupid, and I thought I had destroyed my brain. And so I was basically just screaming no in my friend's yard for like an hour that felt like an entire night. It was a very bad experience, and I had to sort of claw and scrape to get all my memories back. It's sort of like, COVID, it numbs your smell and taste. It was that, but with all of my memories and understanding and all of that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
terrifying.
have you been on Spice?
No,
Oh, okay,
maybe.
yeah.
I did a lot of drugs and I didn't know what they were because I was just an addict. I'm gonna take anything. But
Well,
I don't partake in anything anymore, but I about a year of my life I microdosed on and off and had several very intense trips and it was just on mushrooms.
mhm.
But I advocate heavily for I think that if you are in the right mindset and you are capable of handling it, psychedelics can be incredibly beneficial.
I could not
And
agree more.
I mean, like I said, as long as you go in, if as long as you go into the trip, like every time I did a massive trip, I would sit down and reflect on what I was about to experience and what I wanted to experience and what I needed to get out of this. And when I was microdosing, it was just to honestly keep my vibe going. But I always came out of the trips better. And I hear people's stories about how they had horrible trips with psychedelics and had horrible experiences, but I didn't even try psychedelics until I was about 22 or 23. So my brain had processed, I had gotten over my drug addiction, gotten healthy, and then I introduced those things into my mind. And I think that's the key. A lot of people just start taking them because it's fun. It's like a recreational thing, but a lot of
Because
the
it's there.
times you can't. Right, because it's there and you shouldn't be altering your mind like that constantly as a recreational fun day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun to, but it's probably not the best thing for you.
Well, and not to mention, if you're taking mushrooms under simply, I'm just gonna have a good time, LOL, and you have one little thought, one little poke from your inner demons that are kind of going like, hey, we got something to talk about, and you don't want to talk
Mhm.
about it because you're just trying to be LOL, have a good time, you're going to have a bad trip because you're fighting it. If you just kind of let it happen and you just relax and be like, oh, okay, learning experience time, I guess, and you just accept it, it's going to be over in a couple of minutes and you can pull yourself back out of it. It's all just kind of your own emotions behind it. So yeah, most of the time when there is a bad trip, I mean, I've had trips that have gone pretty whack, but I won't call any of them a bad trip because ultimately I learned a lot from them at the end, but I only learned a lot from them because I allowed myself to learn from them. If you fight it, then yeah, it's just going to be sheer hell.
Well, I think, because the thing about Spice is that
I don't know about spice.
Spice is
Yeah, I
completely
know nothing about
synthetic.
spice.
Mhm.
What they say, like when they discuss it online, they call them research chemicals because they'll take something that you can smoke but that doesn't do anything, like, tea leaves or something, and they will spray chemicals on it. And you don't know what these chemicals are when you buy it. You just know that this will fuck you up. And it fucked me up in a really bad way by making me stupid for an hour and a half territory.
Yeah, that's not something I'd recommend anybody
Yeah,
to.
no.
Who's the guy who he'd do like the pedophile bust and he'd be like, go ahead, have a seat right over there,
Hanson.
uh Hanson, yeah, Hanson. I saw a thing. I mean, this is a decade ago when the whole spice thing was really big and really happening. And he sort of did that to a guy who made the shit. And basically, it was like he'd make some chemical that was legal and he'd sell it for a few months. The government would make it illegal. He'd alter it a little bit and sell it again, and the government would
Yeah.
make that illegal, and he'd just keep changing it. But he pulled like, "Oh, go ahead, have a seat right over there," and he's like, "Oh, I'm Chris Hansen," blah blah blah. And did this whole setup thing with them. It was pretty funny, but yeah, that stuff was pretty gnarly for sure. I've done a
How
lot of
did that
stuff,
go?
but things. What's that?
The interview. What happened in it?
So basically, I think Chris Hansen was posing as like a somebody wanted to buy like a large amount of it, to stock his convenience stores or whatever. And then the guy was all bragging about how he does it and how awesome his shit is. He's like, "I'm a mad chemist, yo," and he's just like, "Oh yeah, well, guess what? I'm Chris Hansen." And the guy was like, "Yeah, I knew you were Chris Hansen all along." And I don't think he did.
Probably not, especially since Hansen generally doesn't specialize in drug offenses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was nice to see him branching out, I suppose.
You
Yeah,
keep
well,
saying
he should
Hanson,
probably
but I
do
keep
that.
thinking of the Mbop guys.
Oh, they were so dreamy, huh?
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really know who they were until like 4 years ago.
Oh, really?
I
They
wasn't
were-
allowed to listen to 90s, like I wasn't allowed to listen to boy bands growing up or anything like that. I grew up on like classic rock and shit. So I hadn't heard my first NSYNC song in full until like a year ago.
I was allowed to, and I had
it just doesn't have the same effect.
yeah, I was allowed to, and I had a phase that I'm not proud of where I actively liked them. But
We all have those phases. It's
Yeah.
okay.
I think I was probably 10. But yeah, it's long since over. Dag, you said you had to go at 5 or at 8:30 for you.
Yeah, I gotta get out of here. We gotta do dinner and stuff. And
All right, well, I'll continue it as long as it goes and wrap it up. Y'all be sure to follow him on Twitter if you want more information about his new series coming up on Odyssey about gardening, prepping, and the like. He's going to post that to the Agnex Odyssey, and we're gonna get some reasonable like level of content from him relatively soon. You can support his work at the subscribe star as well. So. And at Agorist Acres Seeds, code Nexus for 20% off.
Yes. Thank you very much. Han, Lawless, thank you so much for joining us. This was excellent. I'm really looking forward to your show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us
Appreciate
on.
it.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too.
Thanks.
But yeah, like I personally advocate clean sobriety for everyone at this point. I think, if you want to do that sort of thing and like, you're in a good place and it's not going to destabilize your life, sure. But to me, like the ultimate thing is you could be spending that money and time that you were spending, procuring and hanging with those circles. You could be working out. You could be learning a skill. You could be advancing your position. If you're a parent, you could be like, being with your kid and being more active. If you're not a parent, you could be getting closer to your parents so that you could ask them how they raised you, how they managed to get you to where you are. If you don't have a good relationship with them, you could be like building relationship. Like we could be working so hard for a revolution, but so many anarchists and people in revolutionary circles would rather just feed their head and act like it's, oh, I had an ego death. I'm so enlightened. Hey, this is such a great. No, you didn't. You like getting high. Shut the fuck up.
No, I'm sorry.
Right.
I talk a lot about ego and ego death very frequently on Twitter. And
not saying you specifically.
I know you're not. I know you're not, because that's my thing. I credit ego death towards advancing more towards the things you were just talking about, learning more skills, bettering myself as a person. Ego death means you want to improve, not you want to just on the couch all day.
Well,
like, no.
And so, and like I said, I had that whole year-long experience where I was doing it purposefully. I was microdosing and going through these trips to heal and to find things. But I was going into it, like I'm sure Harley does too, like with a purpose. I mean, unless you're just trying to have fun. But going into it with a purpose and allowing it to heal you and allowing it to show you those things can be incredible. I don't think everyone needs it. I don't think everyone can handle it. But I think that I'm better because of those experiences. I'd be fine without them. I'll go ahead and say that. But I think that I am better because of it.
And I will say too, there's not even necessarily always something wrong with every now and then just having fun with them. I know for me, that is actually one of my big struggles is I have a hard time just allowing myself to have fun because I've been raised in multiple environments where if I'm not constantly producing, then I have no value. So I became a very major workaholic over time because I felt like if I was taking any time to myself, then I was worthless. So
Similar.
having that mental break of where I'm like, no, I am going to make myself just have a good time and shut down the constant nagging voices of, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing this. I know the next day I'm going to be functioning and I'm going to accomplish many tasks. I can allow myself to have like a break every now and then. So even that in its own way is healing for me anyway. You know, I wouldn't say do it all the time, but every now and then, yeah, no, I mean, on its own, that is also a therapeutic thing.
Right.
One, and I have
I
a
mean-
similar thing with going for like walks, runs, and the parkour thing. So, like, just I'm going to take this time, and if people don't want me to, then they can shove it. You know, this is my time to enjoy being a being on this planet.
No, yeah, and everybody deserves that. But I like that you do though, because we're all on the same page here.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy yourself, but try to make it wholesome and productive where you can. That's why I encourage people to get into, you said yourself, skill sets, hobbies, find something you enjoy creating, learn another language. That's something a lot of people don't do. And I'm kind of adding myself right there too, because I keep starting to try to learn another language and then I get bored and I push it aside, and I need to stop doing that. My son knows more languages than I do. But yeah, like I want to know, like, I never really see a whole lot of this talk on Twitter about ego death, but you are very much in a different section of Liberty Twitter than I am, to be honest, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
But I find that funny that they're using that to excuse themselves and just justify themselves more, to just kind of sit around and do nothing all day.
Well,
that's not how things work.
So it's, you know, it's less about my specific followers or the circle, and it's more that I grew up in a place where
Gotcha.
like drugs were very much drugs.
Gotcha.
And like the whole, like I've heard, and so I know generally how to recognize that sort of person, and I can get them generally pinned down to a conversation or whatever, where they are more comfortable, you know, saying what they really feel. And generally the fact is that like a lot of people, when they talk about ego death or like, you know, experiencing some deeper connection, man, they're generally just, they had a really good trip, and they then came out of it using words that they heard. They don't know what any of that means, and they don't care. And some of the people who have had the biggest ego deaths are some of the most egotistical bitches I've ever seen in my life.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I don't know if you saw it the
I
other
completely
day.
agree.
No, I don't know if you saw the other day. I actually kind of made a tweet regarding this sort of topic, where I do follow a lot of Twitter accounts that are like about bettering yourself, about humbling yourself. But unfortunately, this is kind of what inspired our podcast. They're all directed towards men. And I mean, that's not bad. I'm not saying that they shouldn't exist, because I think they're wonderful in their own way, but it's like, where are the women ones? For God's sake, where are they? But there was one
there
particular...
are. That's like Jeffree Star and
God, I'm started on that.
and Tiana.
Right, God. But there was one I saw, one of the accounts made a tweet basically saying marijuana just bad no matter what. And he said that he used to smoke, like literally would start the day with a joint, smoking all day, ending the day with a joint. And I'm like, well, yeah, because he's like, oh, it was such a waste of time, so nobody should ever touch it. I'm like, well, don't blame your lack of self-control on the, it's like, no, like, but here's the thing. This was one of the accounts directly dedicated towards killing your ego and bettering yourself and addressing your and I'm like, that's a little ironic, isn't it? And then other accounts that were similar were commenting and saying the same stuff, and they were all agreeing. And I'm like, none of you should be preaching about ego death here, because you're not even, it's one thing, you know, if you were saying like, yeah, I took it too far, I didn't have any self-restraint, I let it consume my life. So if you fear maybe you have an addictive personality like I do, it's just best if you don't touch it. That I would be like, okay, that's fair. Absolutely. That's not what they were doing. They were like, oh, it's really bad, and it made me smoke it all day. No, it didn't. That was your decision. And
or when somebody is like an addict,
and your ego is preventing
territory.
you from admitting it.
Yeah.
What?
Or when somebody's an addict in addict territory, and they're like, that wasn't me. That was no, it wasn't. That was a different person.
That was you.
That was you.
That was
Take
you.
responsibility and stop being that person. Don't say it's a different person or it's not you anymore. It's still you.
Right.
You're just
Well,
better now because you've added more self-control and restraint, allegedly. But you know, a lot of those people, they're just like, yeah, go ahead.
I used to be embarrassed by talking about how I used to be, but dude, I would steal from my parents. I would lie to my parents. I was just a horrible human being. I was constantly on drugs, anything and anything I could find. I just have an addictive personality. So once I got over that and I realized I was just being selfish and I was being a piece of shit and it was easy to fix that, I got over it. It's not hard to be a good person. It's not hard to make good choices and have some form of moralistic agenda for yourself and hold yourself to these standards and have boundaries.
Get a framework.
And people don't yeah. But
Yeah.
people don't want to do the work. They enjoy living their lives the way they want to.
Flawless, let me ask you
That
something.
instant gratification. Yeah.
Mhm. Let me ask you something because I'm sure you've gone through similar. We both have had major weight loss experiences, right? Major weight loss journeys. How many times have people asked you, well, how did you lose the weight? And you tell them what?
I worked out, I ate right,
Mhm.
and I got my life together. I've had women legitimately get angry at me and they're like, well,
Yes.
didn't you use some sort of diet pill? And I'm like,
Yes. That's
I
exactly
took my
what I
vitamin
was
B,
gonna-
but
that's
like I was
exactly
like,
what
I
was
just
gonna get at.
it took me 4 fucking years to get to where I am.
It took me
I mean,
it took me
I
8.
lost 150 pounds. It took me over a year to lose 100 pounds. I mean, it was dedication, but I dedicated myself to bettering myself so I could do. And dude, 5 years ago, I was doing cocaine off of a toilet in a bar somewhere, probably. And
Yeah.
now I'm living with my partner. My boyfriend. Living with my boyfriend. Moved to a small town. I'm opening a business with him. We just did our first payroll yesterday. Like, I am stoked. I am a completely different human being. I'm a new person than who I was, but I still embrace who I was and what I did and my actions because I am who I am because of who I was.
Exactly. And that's such a wonderful way of putting it. Like, those experiences shaped us into what we are today. Our past is what turned us into what we are. And were we always perfect? No. Are we still gonna be perfect now? No. But ultimately, the only decision between what we are now, what we were then, or even what we are now versus other people who are struggling to get their lives together, it's decision. That's it.
Right.
And that's exactly what I was going to say with, because yeah, you mean you didn't take a pill, you didn't try this fad diet, you didn't do this or that. No, I just got off my ass. And then the excuses, oh my God, the excuses I would hear from like other mom. Well, I'm a mom. I have 2 kids. Well, I'm tired all the time. I'm narcoleptic. Well, I'm in pain all the time. I have chronic spine issues. Yeah. Well, I don't have time. I run a home business and I homeschool 2 children. Like, none of the excuses are viable 90% of the time. I'm like, obviously, there are some exceptions, of course, disabilities or whatever it may be.
Right. 20 minutes of floor workout today, even, dude. Like,
well, and not
so
to mention when you're
easy.
sitting here telling me you have no time and then you're bragging on Facebook about how you binge watched an entire season of Doctor Who in the past week. Like, no, you had the time.
Right.
Why aren't you doing a workout while you're watching Doctor Who? Well, I would watch, I'm sorry, weeb time. I would watch One Piece, okay? And I would just freaking do my workouts like in the middle of the living room. Like, I will be Zorro someday. Just pumping for like an hour to 2 hours. I used to do that.
I have similar because, as you can see, I'm of the Sonic fandom. And so oftentimes, because of the amount of time I listen to Sonic music normally, I'll be like, it's just in my algorithm. So it'll move from like Slipknot to like something from Sonic Heroes or something in my random playlist.
I have that too. Like, it'll be like just hardcore, like metal or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like freaking the JoJo's season 1 theme song or something.
Yeah.
But whatever works, right? Whatever gets you pumped, it doesn't matter. You could
Well,
be working out
diversity.
to freaking Celine Dion for all I give a shit, as long as you're moving. I don't care. I'm gonna look at you weird,
yeah.
but
well, and that's the thing. Like, my playlist is wide and varied, but also like it's mostly stuff that would like encourage at least somewhat of a libertarian mindset. And Sonic is complementary to that. It's all about libertarian stuff. So I mean, when it comes on, it keeps me in the right headspace. For the reason I'm getting these gains is to fight for a better future, and that's my thing about
Right.
fitness, is that I think people aren't self-motivated for the right reasons, because
Mhm.
most people are have learned to be complacent and work themselves into the Pavlovian machine. And that's exactly what it is. Like, Pavlov's dogs was a training experiment where, they would sound a tone and the dog would start drooling because it thought it was going to get something again. And that's exactly what it is with like school system in general, is that it's all bells and tones and, code words and obedience and authority, and it gets kids learning to love their chains before they're even out. So like, I wouldn't even care like if they were 100% trans inclusive or exclusive. That would still be awful. And so like, just adding anything to that, to me, like, just abolish the Department of Education, because it produces a lack of self-motivation when people aren't being taught to find their own sort of motive on their own. They're
Well,
not they're learning to do it because they're told to do it, not because
yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
And not to mention, everyone has grown so addicted to, as Lala said earlier, instant gratification. They are not taught to think of the long run from now. Something that really stuck with me when I first really started to lose weight, I would constantly tell myself, and I tell this exact same thing to my kids too, whenever they're practicing, my son's learning guitar and other things, I tell them, keep up with it. And 3 months from now, you're going to be thanking yourself. And I kept that mentality every single day. 3 months from now, I'm going to thank myself. 3 months from now, I'm going to thank myself. But most people don't really see it that way, which I didn't at first either. That's why it was so profound to me when I first saw some meme on Facebook or something that said it. And I was like, holy shit, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's actually good advice. And I rolled with that. But that's why we have such a big hookup culture. It's why so many people are unhealthy, because it's, well, I want the junk food now, which I'm not going to lie, I am absolutely guilty of that too. My addiction, sweet tooth. I have a major sweet tooth, so I have to be careful with sugar, because otherwise I just want it all day. If I drink my coffee in the morning, I can't use real sugar. I have to use like stevia or something, because if I use real sugar at all, it's like I'm going to want it the rest of the day. So I had to kind of figure out my own body chemistry to work around that. But
yeah, I just circumvent that by buying extremely cheap pharmaceutical grade caffeine on Amazon.
those knock me out. I
Love
can't
that.
see. I say coffee, but I have to do like super low dose caffeine, or I will be asleep in the next 45 minutes. But yeah, instant gratification has, and not just instant gratification, but just being comfortable all the time. Those two things alone are just killing us so bad. And we're never going to grow unless we start to kind of reject that and embrace, like, learn to love the pain, basically.
Yep. Own personal responsibility, finding your own reasons. What were you gonna say, Lawless?
I was going to say that's the thing. Life is continuously figuring shit out. It's navigating everything constantly every day. And if you can't do that, you're not going to do too great. And we're seeing that fluctuate in our society nowadays with how many. It's just sad to see how generations are falling. Well, and I say generations are falling apart. I think that millennials, Gen X, whatever, they all have a lot of good people in them, and they all have potential to do better. But I think the mainstream narrative is just so skewed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
We're
and it's
really-
skewed in favor of obedience, which is why
Right.
these
Yes.
people, they're trained, and I was one of them. I was trained, and I resisted a lot of their training, but like, it was only when I was an adult I really started to realize how much the training and conditioning had been worked in, how it'd been, it's like, it's a mix of Pavlov, the Prussian school system, which was indoctrination for nationalism, And like all of that combined with the MK Ultra experiments where like those and all the associated MK like artichoke, bluebird, all that stuff, they figured out that if you fuck with people and traumatize them, you can force them into heightened state of acceptance, because like their brains are erasing
There's
enough
control.
info that they can get new info on how to escape. So that they'll learn to escape from the bad circumstances you create by being the kind of person you want them to be in exchange for the keys to their cell. But it just leads them to a bigger cell if that's the case.
And that starts literally from birth too, because I am trained to be a doula actually. And one of the things we were discussing was how so many doctors, so let me preface a little bit. My instructor is actually from the UK. She's a very well-renowned doula. So the practices that she was used to, all of her children are born in a different European country, very different from the US. So she was doing a lot of comparison. And she's like, something that the US does is they, especially with cesareans, they don't give the baby to the mothers instantly. They're doing all these poking and prodding, and it's cold and it's bright. And I mean, something that really hit me a while back. Think of how traumatizing it must be alone just to be born. One of the theories to the image of grays, the aliens that, that it's so common. Oh, I was abducted by aliens. We see grays. It's actually theorized that's a subconscious memory of the very first thing we see when we're born, because it's just, there's no color really. That's why they look gray. It's just these big eyes looking at you. You're getting poked and prodded and tested and lights beaming down on you. You come from this nice little crayed warm, spot to you're squeezed through a damn tunnel. You get submerged into that. So now imagine that. And you're wanting your mother. You hear your mother's voice and you're not allowed to access your mother. You're being kept by these strange beings from your comfort zone. That first hour of a newborn's life is one of the most critical moments of infancy development. And most of the time they are denied that. So,
and of course, guys have a piece
absolutely.
of their genitals mutilated, because that's the real genital mutilation epidemic, is infant circumcision.
Stop castrating little boys.
Oh yeah,
I
I didn't do that with mine. So yeah, preaching to the choir. But it's, well, not only that, cord clamping. They are also denied a great deal of their nutrients from birth because they just snip the cord. No, you're supposed to wait until it's done pulsating, because all the nutrients are supposed to be sucked, but they don't do that. I wanted to do that with my kids, and they said they literally denied me because they're like, oh, we don't have enough scientific information on that, so we don't do that here. What? So just,
well, scientific information is garnered through tests, so they should have just a consent form. But whatever, liability, hospitals are run by the government.
Exactly. So just think of all these little things, all these things that are going wrong in literally the first hour of a newborn's life.
Yeah,
it starts immediately, and it absolutely rewires their brains when they are the most vulnerable and sensitive.
Yeah, fun fact, during my sleep paralysis and night terrors, one of the most common recurring themes, it's not that I'm looking up at them, but it's that they're there. I will suddenly be surrounded or approached, or just like they'll be in the room, and I know something bad is going to happen by some creatures that I have come to call the faceless. And it's just people in various, clothing. It doesn't need to be anything specific, or just void forms. And then when you look at them, there's nothing to them. Like they're just, yeah. So maybe, but yeah, like either that or it's just something nailed into the human subconscious about like external threats, and like it's one of those like epigenetic kind of like trauma responses to generational trauma.
Yeah, I was actually listening very recently to the Joe Rogan episode with Michio Kaku, and they were kind of touching a little bit about that. Actually, they were talking about how there's this common theme with, they mentioned sleep paralysis. They mentioned how the sleep paralysis demons and the grays and these little, they all kind of have a same theme, where it's these weird little like goblin creatures. And they were just talking, they're like, was that some kind of weird defense thing from like, back in wherever, like, what is that? But it's all kind of a common theme. And now I get to say, I was hoping I get to say this. Have you ever done DMT?
No.
Ah, man. So that's another thing that involves little gremlin like the elves, right? They're these weird little, there's something in our subconscious that connects all of that. And maybe that is, I don't know, some kind of weird childbirth thing. Maybe it's something, I have no freaking idea, but it is interesting how that is all just embedded in our heads. And that's kind of part of this big personal journey I've been on, is how often that relates directly to sleep paralysis.
Yeah, I forget where I heard it, but I think I heard somewhere, like, and it was related to some science papers. Maybe somebody out there can tell me what these papers were, or I can look them up later. But basically, the scientific papers were related to studies that had been done proving that people who have more lucid dreams, which I basically have those every night, more sleep paralysis and more night terrors, that they release more DMT than normal people because it's just a natural chemical anyway. So
Yeah, I've actually been contacting Dr. Rick Strassman about that. um, I won't get all into it because there's a lot of connections, and both in the scientific aspect, the spiritual aspect, like all of it. And I actually emailed him quite a doozy of an email not long ago. And I got to spend the morning just talking back and forth with him. It was really, really cool. And for those of you who don't know, he is the head of DMT research and has been for decades now. He wrote the book, The Spirit Molecule. He's like the main guy to talk about it at this point. And there's so much to it. There's just so much. I'm asking questions, and because I was trying to basically connect it to narcolepsy. And I provided all this. I'm like, I looked into these studies and this and this. And he actually said that the theory that perhaps narcoleptics produce more natural DMT is a very viable theory. So he actually gave me some ways to find connections and resources to see if I can get some narcoleptic researchers on that and see if maybe we can pinpoint more of the cause.
That would be interesting, especially
right?
since, like, given all that information, and given the fact that, it's never been hard for me to like fall asleep at the wrong time. And also given the fact that I overproduce like every hormone, and I'm not just talking testosterone and adrenaline, but also literal like progesterone and estrogen. I overproduce those for somebody my sex and age, etc. Because everybody produces all of them, but you're not supposed to produce this many of any of them. And
Right.
so they wanted to put me on pills, and I said no, for a variety of things. I am unmedicated for like about 6 things that they said I should have pills for. So that explains everything.
No, yeah, no, I find it very interesting that you mentioned that, because that's kind of been what I've been doing. I don't know if you saw, I actually did a poll yesterday on Twitter asking, have you
Is it still
experienced
going?
sleep paralysis? It just ended a couple hours ago, but I asked, have you experienced sleep paralysis? And I gave options of not at all, 1 to 3, I think it was like 1 to 3 times, and then it was like, or maybe it was 1 to 4, something like that, and then it was like 4 to 7 times,
I think it was like, yeah,
something like that. Yeah. But something that I found very interesting was that a great deal of the people who said that they had sleep paralysis, there was one guy in particular, he mentioned a noise. I don't know. Do you get a noise when you hit sleep paralysis, Jeremiah?
It depends on the paralysis, but I mean, it like it's mostly a feeling. It's like
it is associated with
it's-
feeling for me anyway.
it's like postural hypotension kind of feeling, kind of everything is television static and something is holding you down.
Yeah, like, so with me, because his comment was, it said something like, when I hear the wah 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 wah, then I know it's gonna kick in. And I was like, holy shit.
I've experienced that. Yeah.
Right. And I've said nobody ever talks about the noise, because I've always had this weird noise. So I started talking to this guy about it, and then I had other people, like, I started messaging other people about their experiences, or they came to me and they started talking about the noise. But here's the thing about the noise. It's the DMT noise. I'm telling you now, which just kind of makes me wonder, like, it honestly makes me think there has to be a connection to DMT and sleep paralysis. And I don't know if you know this, there were studies done on people with various types of psychosis. Nearly 50% of schizophrenics were shown to release extra DMT, particularly in their urine, compared to only 5% of people who don't have any sort of psychosis diagnosis. And so that kind of leads to the theory that, at the very least, schizophrenics, there are people out there who do produce more DMT, and that's probably why they're seeing things, hearing things, etc. Narcolepsy often gets misdiagnosed as schizophrenia and vice versa, because it's sleep hallucinations, and people are going to get it to different severities. Narcolepsy, and I'm sure schizophrenia too, are kind of like, I like to compare it to where it's like autism, where meaning there's different levels of it, and it's not always going to manifest the same way for every person.
Right.
It is very like, there are people who will literally just pass out and fall asleep every 20 minutes. I don't. I get sleep paralysis far worse than anybody else I've ever met. It's going to vary. So it is kind of hard to really always tell what people are, or even diagnose. But I have this strong feeling that there is a direct correlation between the two, for sure, especially when people start talking about their sleep paralysis and their out of body experiences, for instance, or their near death. Like that's, and I'm not saying that's literally what they're going through, but that's like the best way they can describe it, Funny
you should mention that, because I get those. I also get regularly the ones where you're constantly trying to wake up and you think you woke up, but you're still in the dream.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, I get that all the time.
Yeah, or the thing where you'll wake up part of the way and see something in your room. Yeah, lots of stuff.
Oh yes.
And it's funny you should bring up the schizo thing, because also my type of bipolar is strongly correlated with that too, and so they call it vaguely schizotypal, and like they say that it's easy to misdiagnose bipolar as schizo because it's similar enough.
My mom literally went through this last year, 2020, actually. Yeah, I kind of was wondering, but I didn't want to ask because that seemed rude. But I was just curious, just because
I'm an asshole anyway. Like I grilled you about libs of TikTok earlier.
I didn't want to be like insensitive or like imply you seemed that way or something. So.
I'm
a compliment.
I'm just kind of laughing inside because yesterday Lawless was like, "Oh, you should totally talk about the results of your narcolepsy of the podcast." I'm like, "Nah, that doesn't pertain to anything." And here we are.
Well, see, to me, I think root psychology is hugely important to like anarchy in general. If we don't know how we think, we can't know how we're going to behave in a context.
Yes, honestly, yes. I thank you for saying that, because people think it's kind of funny that I've been on such this like path, but it's like I'm trying to know more about myself.
The human condition before we figure out the human like society.
Right, exactly. I feel like, and that does go back to ego death and everything we were talking about before. You have to know yourself. If you want to accomplish certain tasks, you have to know how you work, your personality, your mentality, your triggers, your body chemistry. You got to kind of figure yourself out. Yeah. What is your foundation? And then build from there.
Yeah, I get told that I sound like a non-Canadian Jordan Peterson all the time, because I'm always about this kind of thing. Like, you got to build your foundations, get like a framework and shit. You're Canadian?
Me? No, I said non-Canadian. I was laughing at. I didn't even know he was Canadian. I kind of tend to ignore the Canadians. I don't know.
You can't tell by how he talks.
I don't listen to how he talks. I've never really listened to him.
Well, I don't not appreciate everything he does. I think he does some good stuff, but like I do think that a lot of people who do appreciate him suck his cock really hard, and it's not actually about like, hey, let's
absolute
figure it out. It's like, hey, Jordan Peterson said this. Like I don't care if he said something that's true, then let's talk about the true thing he said, and then say, hey, this is the way he said it. We can have an interesting discussion. But it's like, it's one of those things where like people, especially in the manosphere, they've got this like mentality of, oh, influencers said something. I don't fucking care. Like, I'm gonna form my own opinions. That's the reason that even though like I was an asshole about this earlier on, I'm still willing to like have a conversation about the thing that people might disagree with, and I'm willing to be like challenged as well, because the whole point of
all
it
important.
Is, like, grow.
It's all important all around for everybody, myself included. Like if I'm wrong about something, then I'll learn from it. But I mean, that's how we grow as people.
Yeah.
You know,
I,
it's
I would
well,
I would advise you check out Jordan Peterson though, at the very least to understand the phenomenology. Like and you could discuss certain things he says on your show and how they relate to maybe a stronger case for femininity. Because like I've got some women who watch him because he like explains in a way that makes sense to them the male condition. So
mhm.
occasionally watching things like that is a way to bridge the gap between
Oh,
the
you're not wrong
manosphere and the
there.
womanosphere.
No, you're not wrong there. I just don't really like, I just listen to so much. If I do have time to listen to something, I usually listen to other stuff instead,
Yeah.
you know, and so other things kind of get a back burner, I guess. You know, I only
Yeah.
have so much time, especially when I'm homeschooling two kids. And yeah, I could listen to stuff as I'm working on my orders or whatever, but sometimes that's just not best for me because I'm focused on my orders and then I'm accidentally tuning out what's in my ears. And then
That's
what, you know what
that's
I
why for the
mean?
first 2 hours of every day I'm listening to music from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
It's got to get that pump.
Yep.
Got to go fast.
About you, Lawless, what's your routine?
My routine, well, for the last month or so, I've been getting up at like 6 a.m. and heading into a grocery store and having freezers go out, and painting walls, and all sorts of wonderful things have been happening.
It's
But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm usually up and moving on starting my day by 7, and then I don't get home until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, or don't get done with my day until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. So hopefully that'll change once the store opens. We go live next Wednesday. So we're not even there yet, but it's been a lot of work, man. Don't buy an old building to remodel. It's a terrible idea.
really
Well,
worth it though.
you
It'll be
know, you
worth it.
say
It's
that.
gonna be so worth it. And the thing is we're doing it because we want to bring culture back to this town. We want to rejuvenate a community that he grew up in. And we
Mhm.
love the small town vibes. Like I want to raise my own kids. I want to have a homestead. I want to go out on the porch and drink my coffee and feed my chickens before I make my husband breakfast and get my children up to school them. And I believe in pod learning and everything that we've talked about, homeschooling, obviously I agree with.
Yeah.
But we're doing this and we're busting our asses right now so that in 20 years, we can be content and we
Yeah, well,
can.
and because I wanted to bring that up as soon as you said, don't do the old. Well, because even though that's a joke, and I could tell you were joking,
Mhm.
that feeds directly into it because there's a lot of people who say that they want nature. There's a lot of people who say that they want that vibe, the whole trad thing, and then
Mhm.
they'll do things like waste perfectly good buildings, or build a new building when there's like a building that they could retrofit. And every
Right.
time a person does that, it fucks up another part of nature and removes it from future generations. And so I would
Right.
prefer if people if anything, tore down some of these new stores and moved them into the older stores so that people could have more nature to experience and humanity would be less of a scar on the planet. I'm big into zero waste, or as I call it, waste reductionism, because I'm not one of those. I got into it because of like a lot of environmental stuff that I encountered before, and then I was exposed to the label zero waste by Earth Nerd on Twitter, and like there's a
Mhm.
lot of like things that people can do if they want to be more like. I also don't like the label trad because it's like, which tradition? Botswana, Zimbabwe, like.
Mhm.
So like but I do appreciate a lot of the stuff that a lot of people who identify as trad say that they support. So like one of the things that I think would be very helpful for that is if people started to rely more on these like smaller businesses and like like shop at stores like you're opening rather than building a new one by tearing down a bunch of trees, uprooting all the life, killing all the animals, and like polluting the local water. Like
Right.
that there's a lot to be said for like Ted K was right.
Right. Well, and another thing that we're doing everything local. Like we're having local farmers, local egg producer, local, like we're doing
Localism.
everything that we. Yes, that's everything that we want. And at some point, like I hope to be able to produce all of our eggs for the store myself on our own property. But right now we should probably get the grocery store open, and then I can worry about that stuff.
I think it's a
But
beautiful goal, though. I love
I mean,
that.
it's been a learning process, and we kind of just decided I was going to try to get him to move back to Texas with me, and then I came to visit him in Indiana, and we saw the grocery store in town was up for sale, and about a month later, we were talking about signing a contract to buy a grocery store, and we felt a calling, like, and we feel fulfilled. We are stoked about it in so many
Yeah.
ways, and we feel like we're going to be able to do amazing things.
And you'll
But
be able to tell
man,
your
it's
story
been
on this
hard.
podcast.
Right, exactly. And I think that learning the homesteading process and learning all these things about the family unit, and so like I'm learning. I'm not even a mom yet. So I have a lot to figure out. And I think learning that in the process of doing the podcast is going to be beneficial for me as well as our viewers. And so
Mhm.
I'm insanely stoked about this and doing this with Harley, because I think that we have a lot of the same morals. I'm sure we won't agree on everything always, but we have the same moralistic basis, and I really appreciate that about her. So
Yeah,
Yeah, no-
we'll have one person who's like already there and one person who's coming with her.
right.
I don't know about already there.
In terms of being a mother
Yeah,
trying to do
yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I popped out 2 kids. That's not the only difference.
Yeah.
but I mean, but that is the thing,
No,
though.
you're doing
Like,
great.
oftentimes, we would kind of see each other's posts, and we'd always like each other's posts and all. We were always like, yeah, I agree. And then one day, I think I reached out to you. I was like, why are we not like messaging each other? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
And-
I'm pretty sure you said, why are we not friends? And
Yeah, I was like,
I've
what are we-
actually been wondering that myself.
Right. I'm like, what are we doing? So like, let's start like talking. And then, yeah, we
And
kind
then
of
within a month, we started talking about the
Right.
podcast.
exactly.
And then
It
we were like,
didn't
let's
take
have a
any
phone call
time.
just to see if we can talk. And
Yeah.
we talked for 2 hours straight one day, and it worked out. And I mean, I've always loved her Twitter. I've always loved her energy, and now
But I
we
mean,
talk every day. And
Same with
it's
you
pretty
though.
rad.
Like I was like, because we've had this discussion before. A lot of women like to say that they're the real deal, and they're not. And actually, kind of like what you said, Jeremiah, like the term trad is also definitely a weird term. And I did a poll a while back. I asked, I'm like, men, what is your definition of a trad wife? Like, what does that mean to you? And I was depressed. I sent her the results. I'm
sad.
like, this is sad, because
It
it
was
was so bare minimum. It was like, don't cheat on me and love the kids. And I'm just like, holy shit. That's trad wife to you?
Yeah.
Literally the basics of being a
The basis of being a
wife
mom.
and mom? Like, what
Yeah.
the fuck?
Well, but see,
And-
that's the reason I don't like the label, is because it means
Right.
nothing. Nobody who uses it means
I
jack.
hate using
There's
the
no
label trad.
objectives. Yeah, no objective
Yeah.
standardization.
Exactly. So it was a very big eye opener for me, at the very least, like, because I knew it was bad, but I guess I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah.
So I saw the results, and I'm like, this is why because all these men, they're saying like, well, we can't find a woman to match these things. We can't find any of them
Or
out there. And I'm
They're
just
only
like-
looking on the internet, and they have a very limited
I
view
mean,
of the
that's
world.
not wrong
because-
either. That's not wrong either. But
Well,
I
and-
mean, well, and it is going to be also a
Don't even get
regional
me
thing
started on
too.
dating apps.
Yeah, for real. But I will say there is also a regional aspect going on too. Some places, if you're like in diehard liberal California, it's going to be harder than,
You'd be
I don't-
surprised.
no, I'm not saying they're not out there. It's just, it's just regional stuff, political differences and whatnot. Like, it's
The
just
ol-
how it goes.
The only point I would bring up is that there are a lot of people sick of a lot of things in California. I
Oh,
was one of
sure.
them.
Oh, well,
And
yeah, same.
yeah. So what I can say to that is, like, there's a lot of people who like would be willing to start that, but you got to like go outside. There exists a world off Twitter and
Right.
Facebook and Reddit and 4chan
Or
and
Tinder, for God's sake. But yeah, you're not
Grindr,
wrong there
fucking
either.
like
Grindr.
Bumble.
Right.
Bumble
Right.
Bumble is the extreme form of that. Like, let's get the most like beta dudes like gathered in the same place so that chicks can choose them like the queen bee, feel super
Right.
special about themselves by default because they got the pick of the litter.
Right.
Like, they're the only ones who can swipe. You can't swipe, man. And so like there's a lot to be said for just going outside, meeting somebody, doing something physically interesting in a physically interesting place instead of,
Right.
hey, I couldn't find this woman in a sea of women on Twitter, which is 80% bots. You know,
Right.
I couldn't find this woman with my, you know, schizotypical profile picture and my depression nest that I post pictures of on occasion. I can't find this woman while I constantly talk shit about women. I wonder why I can't find this woman.
I can't find a decent
Right.
woman when I'm only following the women that, well, here, let's put it this way. I can't find a good, wholesome, clean, loyal, modest woman when I'm only following the female accounts that flash their tits. Like, well, no shit.
Right.
What a shock.
I need to
But-
find a non-whore. Let me go to Pornhub and masturbate while I think about it.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I
That's-
mean, you're not, that is definitely an
absolutely.
issue, but that's kind of where
Right.
I always go back, where men are fucking up, women are fucking up. Everyone, you know, there really
Yeah.
is no
This
We just all need
society
to
is
grow the
broken.
fuck up and be
exactly
accountable.
exactly. So I can't tell a man how to be a man. You know, I'm not a man. I can say, well, like the Jordan Peterson thing, I can tell you, like, this is how a woman is, this is what we are looking for, this is what we can provide, you know, when we're at our fullest. But I can't tell you how to be a man. You kind of just have to figure out how to be a man, and maybe, you know, oh, this is what I need to be for the woman. So I mean, that's basically what you're saying with Jordan Peterson, right? Essentially, but on the flip side,
I mean, kind
Kinda,
of. My
like-
whole deal is I'm willing to be taught by women about how to be a man as long as they're willing to understand what it takes. Like
yes.
a lot of women, like, oh, we want equality. Well, okay, how many of you are going to sign up to be a logger or a crab fisher or a
Right.
telephone line technician or any of these number of like highly dangerous? Nope. I just want better pay. Well, are you going to be more competitive in the workplace? Even if it's
Exactly.
an office job? No, I just want it by default. Well, I mean, okay, so what? And
Well,
so they
and-
don't, the wage gap is mostly just a skill and competition gap. And
Yes.
like there are some genuine sexist employers and genuine sexism in society, but like let's be real here, you know. And
Right.
so if women are willing to be sensitive to men's issues instead of pretending that they don't exist and everything that happens has to be a woman's issue,
Mhm.
if they're willing to do that, then yeah. And if I'm willing to do that with them and acknowledge their issues as well and
Right.
try to be a good person to them, then it shouldn't be a problem if I say, hey, yeah, maybe don't drink while you're ovulating and your kid won't come out with another kid attached.
Right. No, yeah,
Right.
exactly. That's kind of more, well, you know, that reminds me, I was telling Lawless about this not long ago. There was that lesbian woman who wrote a book about how she went undercover as a man for a
Yeah.
year and a half, and she ended up institutionalized. She actually just killed herself, like, what, 3 weeks ago? Something
Really?
like that.
Yeah,
She
he said, that's
did.
when he sent it to me. Yeah.
She did. Yeah. It was like right after I was telling her about it. And then I'm
Wow.
like, oh shit. Because it was that bad. She expected, oh, men have it so easy. Men have the world handed to them. And she found out the hard way that's just not true.
Mhm.
But
I
that
gotta look
brings
this up.
I-
Holy shit.
let me I think it's called Self-Made
It's-
Man is the
Yeah.
name of the book. Let me confirm. Last time I looked at it, it was all sold out. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Self-Made Man,
by
Nora
Nora
Vincent.
Vincent. Yes, that's it. I have not read it yet. I would very much like to read it. But because it literally is about how this woman was men have
Yeah.
it easy.
So it was July 6th, death. At a clinic in Switzerland. Her death, which was not reported. Time. I need to look this up. This is New York Times here. She trained. This is okay. So she was 53. The book was no joke. It was nuanced and thoughtful. Blah blah. Rich and audacious. New York Times said. July 6th, her death, which was not reported at the time, was confirmed on Thursday by Justine Hardy, a friend. The death, she said, was medically assisted, or what was
Oh,
known as a
goodness.
voluntary assisted death.
I knew it was suicide. I didn't know it was a medically assisted one like that. But
So she went in for Kevorkianism because she had a really bad time in life.
Oh yeah, no, she was institutionalized, and she actually wrote a book on the poor healthcare in institutions following everything too. So, but it does, it just shows women do not understand men, men do not understand women. And I mean, you can in some ways, but you're just never going to be able to because you're just not one of them. It's like trying to understand how to be a dog. I can understand dog behaviors, I can understand dog needs, but I can't fully understand how to be a dog.
This is from New York Times. She
Mhm.
was a libertarian. She tilted
Was she?
postmodernism and multiculturalism. She argued for the rights of fetuses and against identity politics, which she saw as infantilizing and irresponsible. She did not believe that transsexuals were members of the opposite sex after they had taken surgery and taken hormones, a position that led one writer to label her a bigot. She was a contrarian and proud of it. In a year and a half living as Ned, Miss Vincent put him in a number of stereotypical hypermasculine stitches. He joined a blue-collar blah, blah, blah. We all know this. I think pretty much everybody who watches this podcast is subscribes, which, by the way, if you don't watch this podcast or subscribe, do that. And feel free to support us with links in description. But, like, I think they all know about this. But, like, yeah, apparently she
I had
offed
no idea
herself.
she was a libertarian. I had no idea.
Well, you know, this is New York Times saying she's a libertarian. I don't know that she was a self-described libertarian.
Well, I'm Googling it and I'm finding other things saying so too. So, I mean, maybe, maybe not. I'll have to look more into that because I was not aware of this. But yeah, I have not read the book. It was one that I had on my wish list, and then she died, and now you can't even get the book on Amazon anymore.
Well, that's why
Is it
you
just unavailable or is it sold out?
Yeah, it's like, well, I guess both.
That's why you should use Library Genesis and get it totally legally through Library Genesis. I would never recommend downloading anything illegally, but Library Genesis would certainly have a copy.
Huh, never heard of it. But yeah, well, interesting. So now I just want to
Very well
I want to know more. But yes, what I was saying, this is why men and women, I just say it's like, no, we're meant to balance each other out.
Mhm.
We're meant to submit in certain ways. But
Well, and
when I say submit, that's even a weird word too. It's more like understand that there are certain areas where the man's going to call the shots, but there are also times when the woman's going to have to call the shots too. It's literally just partnership. It's balance. Like that's how it's teamwork.
and
it's a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing. But now we're taught that that's bad.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is people have this concept that you have to have someone that completes you and they make you like the person that you're supposed to be. I see it as my boyfriend compliments me and we complement each other in every way. We're running a business together. We function insanely well together and I'm madly in love with him. So we complement each other in every way. In no way does he complete me. I am my own person. I have my own
Both of you should be
values.
whole people.
I have
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And if you can't do that, you probably shouldn't be diving into a serious relationship.
Yeah, well, responsible fucking, like I said.
Yeah.
See, and that's my thing. It's more like, let me be myself.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, if I have areas to work on and I'm trying to work on them, then support me. But otherwise, you know, just let me be myself as long as I'm not hurting anybody, you know, and I have that. Thank God. Didn't used to, but I do now. And, but a lot of people, they just don't, I don't know. They think that everything is just about them and them alone, especially a lot of feminists in general. They think everything, they're the queen. They get to rule everything. They don't have to cook for them. I was telling Wallace about the Pac Mac little skits he does where it's like basic dude stuff, and he'll, you know, do some manly things like building something or shooting or something, but then he'll do something wholesome like, you know, giving your wife flowers that you grew in your own garden, basic dude stuff. And it's like, oh, how cute. But then I'm like, imagine the flack we would get if we were like basic chick stuff. And it was like making sure your man comes home to a fresh cooked dinner after work.
Mm-hmm.
How much reading would we get? But that's also why we need to do this.
Well, you should
Because,
definitely start
you know,
like a TikTok or something to throw these kinds of things into the void.
Right.
You might get enough people angry
You're
with
right.
you.
No, you're right. I don't use TikTok. That's my only thing. Like I don't even have the app on my phone. And we've already discussed like, oh, we should have like a little thing where we watch a bunch of like cringy feminist TikToks like reading into the abyss and then react it. And we had to discuss, you know, our producer guy is gonna have to watch
He
those
is
and
so
have us
anti
react to him.
TikTok.
He's just as anti-TikTok as me, so we'll figure it out. But
Honestly,
Well,
probably more. I've
I'm
heard so many spiels.
yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, you're probably right. He is.
if you listen to this show or any of my content, which you can find at Jeremiah Talks as well, you'll know I'm extremely anti TikTok, but I'm also anti everything else basically. So I'm against Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, like all this stuff, Discord. But like you're gonna use it like things you hate. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of like, you know, I'm more sympathetic to the left than a lot of other people, and one of the things that I like that they say, that I sort of adapt to myself, is there's no ethical consumption under state capitalism.
Yeah,
And
honestly.
so
Right.
like I hate pretty much everything. Like everything can have its roots traced back to blood, and
Yeah.
everything can have its like its current day application in some terrible evil thing, you know, and we just have to like figure out how to like use the tools anyway, to get the message across, because that's where people are. You know, if you don't go where people are, you're not going to get any messages at all. That's one of the reasons I try to be super like understanding of like as many different types of people as possible, because like, you know, they have to think that you're gonna, you know, not gonna treat them like shit, or they're not gonna come over. Like, so that's my approach to libertarian like and anarchy in general. Like, except if they're doing something against either, like, you know, uh troops and cops and feds and snitches and all these people upholding the system, you know, like if I piss them off good, um
So we need to just kind of Deus Vult our way to TikTok and take it over, is what you're saying.
if you want, and
A
you
full
can
ass
follow me at
crusade.
Insanity is Free. Like I already
I
got
follow you. I
censored
already
there
do. I
once.
already follow you on there.
Yeah, I'm mostly saying that to the audience. It's a good chance to, you know, self plug. But like, yeah, the like I hate the place. I've already been censored there once. I had a video removed for hate speech because
Oh
I
God.
went against Ukrainian Nazis. Apparently talking about Nazis and posting their symbols was hate speech, despite the fact that I was posting them to say, look out for these symbols. They're on a bunch of Nazis, and maybe we shouldn't be supporting these people or sending them tens of billions of dollars because they're fucking Nazis. Oh no, you showed some symbols. This is hate speech, and then they revoked the removal like afterward. So I mean that was a small victory, but it was only after I caused a fuss about it. So
That's basically what happened to me with Etsy and Instagram and all that. I didn't even put anything. The worst, most controversial thing I put up was the Gadsden flag. One of my items that got flagged, it had a rabbit with a couple of like rifles, which there's tons of gun stuff all over Etsy and Instagram. Anyway, I think it's just because I use libertarian tags. I use like, you know, ANCAP, voluntarist, libertarian, etc. And those products got marked, and I'm telling you, there is like a blacklist because I got the same email from Etsy and Instagram at the same time, literally the same day. I mean, I say same, it was like 80% the same verbiage, both calling me a domestic terrorist.
sort of like all these people
Shirts.
calling Alex Jones a hate figure and comparing him to Hitler at once. Like, imagine saying that Alex Jones is just as bad as Hitler.
I know.
Imagine putting him in remotely the same category. Like, that's bitch moded thinking right there.
Oh, I
And
know.
the people who did it literally reversed a decision that you couldn't praise the Azov battalion. So if I can praise literal Nazis, and if those literal Nazis can have a Facebook, a Twitter, etc., and they don't allow Alex Jones, it's because they have an ideological agenda that actually supports fascism. It's not because they're anti-fascist or they don't like hate figures. They
Well, and
just
I'm
like
sure.
hate figures who do what they want.
Well, and I'm sure you know too, Jeremiah, because I do see you talk a lot about pedophiles and going on Twitter.
Yeah.
They could have a platform, but not
Yeah.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, and I literally have a
Priorities.
petition going
Priorities.
around to get pedophiles removed from Twitter. I guess I'll include a link to that in the
Please
description.
do, by all means. It's a very
Please
fitting
do,
episode,
absolutely,
I'd
yeah.
say.
But like I want them gone,
Yeah.
and have for some time. And like, I've got a lot of trans people who agree with me because they're like, yeah, none of these people represent us, because like
Right.
there was one of them who was trying to infiltrate both libertarianism and trans, along with a couple other people, and I pushed this guy out. His name was Riley, and he liked to pose publicly in pictures in diapers and shit. So like, yeah, and he was like pretty deep into libertarian circles, and I still get shit
Whoa.
for talking about that. But it was like libertarian circles, and I tagged like a bunch of libertarians, and apparently that's weirdo behavior because I'm like a fringe person or a nobody talking about somebody else. It's not just accountability. It's not like removing unethical actors from our community. I'm a terrible person for even considering doing that.
I've gone through similar. Actually, I remember one time I had this in my bio for a while with my original account. Somebody got really mad at me, and she insulted me by calling me a anti-pedo colorful crayon, and I'm like, is this a bad thing? And then she blocked me after, and I'm like, so are you mad that I'm anti-pedo? Like,
what the fuck does
fuck?
colorful crayon mean?
Because at the time I had colored hair.
I feel like
So she
that's
was-
a compliment.
That was it.
Oh.
I know. I was like, oh no, I'm anti-pedo. What? However, will I recover? Like, what the fuck?
And the
Then
best part
why
is,
are you not anti-pedo, man?
Well, that's just it. People saw that, and then she got dragged so hard she deactivated her Twitter. I'm like, yeah, you dumb bitch. What you think that was gonna do for you? God,
well,
my laptop's about to die though, guys.
well, what I will say is that this person was not, in fact, trans or libertarian, and they were just trying to infiltrate, because, like, as soon as I started to go against them, they were hurling like a bunch of bigoted slurs at me, and a bunch of threats and things like that. And they were clearly not libertarian, because libertarians wouldn't have a problem with like defending their actions trying to fuck 5-year-olds. So yeah, like there's a significant problem there, but I would say it's mostly infiltrators, not the vast majority.
Right.
And we need to root them out. We need to absolutely stamp them out.
Absolutely.
And the fact that people who are better than they are get removed because they said some shit, like, okay, so what? Like, I mean, everybody likes to tar Alex Jones immediately by bringing up fucking Sandy Hook or something. It's like, is that what you're going to use every single time? Because if anything, you're exploiting the crisis now.
Mhm.
Fuck off. But
Right.
anyway, so either of you have any final words? And I'd love to have y'all on again to talk about some of this stuff more in granular detail. Especially the stuff about like self-improvement. So maybe once you get some episodes out there, we can talk about how it's been going. But anything you want to leave us with?
I will say we do have a couple of other podcast episodes coming up as well. We're going to try to get our own up and running as soon as possible. I have to replace my main laptop battery, and she's got technical
I
stuff
have to
going
get a
on,
grocery
too.
store open.
Yeah, but we are actively working on it and everything. We've been actually putting a lot of thought into this. So hopefully we'll get this up and running soon. And when we do, it's going to be through Anchor, on Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's going to be really, really good. We've been discussing a lot of topics already that we want to bring up. And I mean, this is
We're
like
stoked
balls
about
to the
it.
wall.
And we
Yeah.
have a great Nev is gonna we have our producer. He's great, dude.
He's a Jamie to our Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he spent 2.5 hours listening to us bicker back and forth and talk like idiots while he figured out a bunch of tech stuff, and he's been solid. So we're
He's good
both
with
really
that
stoked.
though. My God, has that man listened to me say some dumb shit for the past couple of years?
Yeah,
So-
I heard an hour of it.
So do you already have a home that people can find you at, or just your Twitters?
Not just yet. Yeah. Our Twitters are the main thing. So mine is at duality of Han or Han. Well, I guess Han because
What's
the
my
pun.
Twitter handle?
Did you just say what is my Twitter handle?
What's my Twitter
It's
handle?
your Twitter handle is
SA lawless.
yeah.
Flawless.
Flawless.
Yeah,
Coleslaw
we were
sucks.
talking about coleslaw at the beginning, so maybe I could just bring up the fact that if you want good coleslaw, you got to make it with something like this, like that
Oh,
took a
God.
shot of
Apple cider
earlier.
vinegar.
Oh, I
Yeah.
hate taking shots of that. Oh God, it's so
love
gross.
Why?
it.
Here,
It's like a
it's-
I
good-
don't like
it's a-
vinegar taste. Like it's so
I love
off-putting.
vinegar, dude.
I don't like.
I could drink. Look at him
The
go.
only thing I'll
I
drink
could
is
drink
like
a jar of
kombucha.
pickle juice.
I'll drink kombucha. That's like it. That's the one thing. Anything like pickles, don't like pickle. Okay, I like sauerkraut.
That's insane.
Those are the two things: sauerkraut and kombucha.
Sauerkraut.
Everything
You
Oh,
like
else-
sauerkraut.
but you don't like pickles.
What is sauerkraut? Oh, you have sauerkraut. Okay.
I leave it out
Why
on
do
the
you have-
desk so that it
wait,
ferments a little.
Wait. Why do you have it on your desk?
It's a snack. It's a basically 0-calorie snack. I can eat the whole thing and
You
not
just-
break keto.
This is like
I
this is like
love
when
that.
Zuckerberg had the bottle of Sweet Baby Ray's just chilling behind.
Yeah, I
Jeremiah's
literally
on his desk sauerkraut.
I literally reach in there with fucking like my chopsticks and I'll eat it like chips.
I
With
love
chopsticks?
that.
You eat
I
sauerkraut with
love that.
chopsticks?
Yeah, here, I can demonstrate it.
please
I was
do
gonna
it.
say.
I on an episode that's coming out
End the
tomorrow.
show well.
I ate part of a Carolina Reaper here too.
I don't get
So-
parkour. I don't get Cirque du Soleil, Jeremiah, and I don't get parkour, Jeremiah, but I get chopstick sauerkraut, Jeremiah.
Hey, I'm here for it. Eat that
Yeah.
sauerkraut.
This will do. This will do.
Well,
But
if
we're
people want,
expecting the parkour at least next time.
well, if people decide they want to support us a lot, I can
On
get
his
enough income to
sauerkraut
afford a
addiction.
decent camera. So,
If you want to fund
Oh,
Jeremiah's
right.
sauerkraut addiction,
well,
Here's
if it's
the
a
link.
consolation, I buy these jars at grocery outlet for $2 a jar for
Not
Bavarian sauerkraut, and it lasts
Ooh.
me like a week or two. So,
Bavarian.
well, 'cause
$2, that's a good deal for sauerkraut.
yeah, it's
for that
matters.
jar.
It needs to come from Germany. They understand sauerkraut a lot better than most Americans do. So
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I tried this great value sauerkraut because it was on sale once, and they were not good. It was it was not sauerkraut. It was bitterkraut. It tasted rotten.
There's one thing the Germans do right. It's hyper focus on things they really don't need to fucking hyper focus on.
But if you don't have good kraut in first, then what are you even?
That's why they have all the best dog breeds. It's because they're so meticulous. That's why their language has a word for every single possible situation you can imagine. They're just
Yeah,
overly meticulous.
like we can't just say cake. We have to say Google Hupf. Yeah, I've
Personally,
got-
I'm very fond of the word Krankenhaus.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Basically, it's lawless. It's the word for hospital, and it essentially translates to suffer house.
Krankenhaus.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes sense. That kind of reflects the
I love
history there.
it. I love it so much.
and so it's funny because one of my favorite bands is like I can't really do top 10 or one anything like top 100 though, top
I'm the
1000
same way.
maybe.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite bands is Cam FDM, and people don't get that it's a double entendre when they have a song called Crank. So yeah, like I so the whole deal is like if you want to support the content and like you'll see a lot more weird shit. But like it's got to get that. Basically doing the podcast for free right now, so y'all feel free to do that. But yeah, like I do this like because it's good, because it's basically 0 calorie and because it's good for my gut health. So
I was gonna say it's got probiotics.
Yeah, it's
right.
so good for
no,
you.
yeah, that's why I drink
And it has
kombucha.
more
I make my
probiotics.
own
You enjoy it.
kombucha. I brew my own kombucha. It's
You
excellent.
And-
You got it.
do.
I
love
do.
kombucha.
And do you do that with a SCOBY you bought, or did you make your own SCOBY?
I did. I bought a bottle from the store and then I drank most of it. And then I poured like the little bit into like the black tea with the raw cane sugar and whatnot. And then I bottle it individually with like, I've got one that's like, what is it? I have a maple mixed berry ginger thing. And then I have like a spiced peach thing going on. They smell good. So hopefully they'll be good. But yeah.
You got some competition in Sonic though. He's got a peach drink now. So
He's got a what?
peach drink. It's called Peach Rings. You can get it from G Fuel.
I love peach rings.
Does it taste like peach rings, like the candy?
It tastes vaguely
be-
like them.
that'd be
It
solid.
mostly
Vaguely.
tastes like an energy drink, which also tastes like peach, maybe. It has essence
Sounds
of
about
peach in
right.
it,
Maybe.
It had aspirations of tasting like a peach.
It's like, yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's
they like
good.
dipped the peach in sparkling water and then pulled it out, and whatever was left is there.
Yeah, it's good. But I'm not gonna pay $2 every time I want to have that flavor. So, choices like
the sugar-free Monster peach actually does taste a lot like peach rings.
Oh well, if you like that, then yeah, this is basically that. So, I mean, yeah,
Is it?
yeah. I mean, it's a very similar flavor profile, a little bit
Okay.
sweeter if anything,
Okay.
and it's not sugar free.
Ah, see. I don't need all the sugar. That's the again.
I
Sugar
think it's not
addict, That's my
sugar-free.
problem.
I might be misremembering that because it is G Fuel and maybe it's sugar free. I don't fucking remember right now, but I think it's not, if I remember correctly. I think it's just a drink. You're free to
Gotcha.
check that out, obviously. Either way, yeah. And obviously I'm not officially sponsored by any of this, so like, that was not an endorsement, but yeah, I like kombucha, I like things like that, and I do mean to get into it at some point. So
It's
maybe
so
if I ever need to
easy.
hit you up about that, I can do that. Because like that sort of thing, mead, there's a lot of stuff people can make at home, and we're getting starting to talk about prepping. So maybe we could have y'all on for another episode to talk about specifically like what your approach to traditional prepping would be.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Because we're
Mhm.
also working on more prepping and homesteading type stuff. I'm going to be getting more meat rabbits in a couple of weeks here. Working more on gardening and whatnot. I really want to get into canning again. So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of my slow progress right now. Like Lawless is opening a grocery store, learning about that. And mine is more homesteading. So, yeah, no, I'd absolutely love to talk more about that. as time goes
Awesome.
on and I
Me
learn
too.
more.
So
Yeah, I gotta hop off and go to bed.
Yeah, my laptop's about to die. So
Well, then let's call it. And so like you two can be found where again specifically?
My handle is _SA Lawless on Twitter.
All right. And you
and
are?
mine is at Duality of Han, HAN, not ham. But
You
yeah,
get that confusion a lot?
it's more that people misread it or like will type it in wrong or something, be like, why is it not working? And it's because I typed ham. So yeah, no, just make sure you're spelling it right.
All right, and we usually end on a quote, so let me do that real quick. Quote, I am free no matter what rules surround me. If I find them tolerable, I tolerate them. If I find them too obnoxious, I break them. I am free because I know that I alone am morally responsible for everything I do. Robert Heinlein.
Sounds very
Agorist
good.
Nexus
I like
out.
it.
The revolution starting inside, an instrumental part of Agora worldwide, Agora worldwide, Agora worldwide. Counter economics, Agorist strip, black market click, move a quick flip, can't regulate this. Agorist strip, black market click, move a quick flip, can't regulate this. Agorist, Agorist, Nexus, Agorist.